Hello, you are listening to Trump Republic Radio. It is October 1st, 2017. I'm your host, Enzo Quesada, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host, Bobby Hester.
Hello, everyone.
You excited to do the show this week, Bobby?
Very much. Let's get straight into it.
Let's go. So the first thing that we want to talk about is the situation in Puerto Rico. That's been, I guess, I would say the biggest story as far as Trump has been concerned.
At least that's what Trump's been focused on, too.
Yeah. And the first thing that we want to get into with that is the Trump administration this week waived the Jones Act. Now, what the Jones Act requires is for ships transporting goods between American ports, which, you know, Puerto Rico is an American territory, it requires that the ships be American and have American crews running it. So by waiving the Jones Act, which has bipartisan support on both sides, it allows, you know, ships not from the United States to send aid to Puerto Rico. So essentially, it's just opening up the market to help out Puerto Rico in its time of need. And they're mainly doing this to get more fuel and gasoline onto the island, because that, you know, runs the transportation for all the supplies in the island.
Yeah, I mean, that island was hit so hard. I mean, the infrastructure was almost totally destroyed in terms of electric grid, water grid, anything like that. So the more supplies they can get to, I'm glad that they waived the Jones Act, because, you know, they need whatever they can get at this point.
Yeah, and they said that if the Jones Act was not waived, prices on goods on the island would likely double. So by waiving the Jones Act, they're going to keep prices on goods in general down on the island.
Yeah, so that's a good move. And also a story that we have here is that, you know, Trump has been facing a lot of criticism over Puerto Rico. Hardly any of it's actually justified. But one of the ways that he hit back, and we're going to get to the second way he hit back here in a second, but they announced that Trump's inaugural committee had about $3 million in surplus funds from way back in January. And they said they're going to donate those $3 million to be divided equally between the Red Cross, the Salvation Army, and Samaritan's Purpose. So at least they're using all those surplus and privately donated funds. They're donating them to the hurricane effort. So you can't say he's not putting his own money towards it, because that essentially is his own money at this point.
Yeah. Which, you know, it's funny, like, you compare what Trump's done to, say, what Hillary Clinton has done. Trump has actually put money into the relief effort, while Hillary Clinton has just tweeted about, you know, help him out, and it's light and day.
Yeah, there is no difference.
But she still stands to criticize Trump on what he's done.
Especially if you look at, like, the way the Clinton, the Clinton, you know, her, like, private donations thing?
With the Clinton Foundation?
How they managed the whole situation down in Haiti when they had the Haiti earthquake.
You wouldn't want them in charge of any money.
Definitely not. But, as we said, the other thing that happened here in terms of Trump hitting back at people, and this is what we were mainly going to get to here, is the mayor of San Juan, Puerto Rico, getting in kind of pretty much like a mini war with Trump over words here.
San Juan, the capital of Puerto Rico.
Yes. And so, you know, this whole thing started with, she started criticizing Trump, and she has been anti-Trump this entire time.
This is Carmen Lulin Cruz?
That is her name, correct.
Yeah.
She's a blonde woman, so she's the one you've seen, like, all over the news criticizing Trump. She went on CNN with Anderson Cooper wearing a black shirt with white letters that said, you know, "We are dying, please help." At what point did those people have the time to make a t-shirt when there's no electricity on the island, you can't get any water to the island, can't get any food to the island, there's no gasoline left on the island, everything's destroyed or severely damaged, and yet she's got the time to do a CNN interview with a custom-made shirt that wasn't made until after that thing started.
She also had a custom hat that said SOS.
Yes,
you remember
that too.
That?
Mm-hmm.
Now, was that the interview where she was in front of the supplies?
No. When she was doing the in front of the supplies, that was like a press conference type deal, separately. But she was an interview with just Anderson Cooper from CNN and her just standing there together talking.
Okay.
That's when she did that. But yeah, the interview she gave, or at least the press conference she gave, when she was standing in front of, you know, giant crates of like water bottles and other supplies, saying, "We haven't been receiving help from the federal government. This isn't helping."
Yeah, in front of supplies.
Yeah. Meanwhile, you know, the governor of Puerto Rico, as well as other mayors across the city, as well as the representative from Puerto Rico that we have in Congress, even though they're not voting representative, they're still there. They've all praised the Trump administration's response and how they've handled the situation.
Other mayors of Puerto Rican cities have as well.
And other mayors, not only that, but they have said that the mayor of San Juan wasn't attending meetings and stuff.
Yeah, I also have a thing here. The Hill reported on this. FEMA Administrator Brock Long defended the stuff Trump was saying, blasting, the San Juan mayor. He said that she had failed to connect with the FEMA command center they set up on the island to help with the relief effort. And this was in an interview with CNN where they said that. So, the federal government is doing everything they possibly can right now, but they just want to portray this as Trump's Katrina. That's the narrative that the media is trying to push this as right now. You look at what Mika Brzezinski tweeted out earlier this week. She said, first the president attacks an American hero fighting for his life. Now he attacks Americans suffering through 2017's Katrina. Hashtag he's not fit. They're trying to, meme this into reality.
Yeah.
The media is trying to use its influence to convince people that it's way worse in Puerto Rico than it actually is.
Yeah, and Trump even responded to that stuff with a few tweets. He said, the military and first responders, despite no electric, roads, phones, etc., have done an amazing job. Puerto Rico was totally destroyed. Fake news CNN and NBC are going out of their way to disparage our great first responders as a way to get Trump. Not fair to first responders or effort. And in regards to the situation with the San Juan mayor, he said, the mayor of San Juan, who was very complimentary only a few days ago, has now been told by the Democrats that she must be nasty to Trump. Well, she's been nasty to Trump. There are tweets from her back in early 2016 saying how she hated Trump in hopes that he doesn't win. So at no point has she ever been on Trump's side. She's always been anti-him. And she is definitely using this for her own political advantage. What's extremely unfortunate is the fact that the U.S. media, of course, being anti-Trump as they are on her side, as you said, trying to meme this into Trump's Katrina, when in reality, the federal government's doing a great job doing everything they possibly can.
Yeah, this is not George Bush Katrina level tier of government negligence at all.
The only government negligence is coming on the side of Puerto Rico.
Yeah.
I mean, as people have said, there's thousands and thousands of pounds of supplies in trucks sitting in Puerto Rico that can't go anywhere because the truckers union is on strike right now.
Yeah.
And they're trying to ask for higher wages to deliver the stuff during the state of emergency or whatever they've declared down there. They're wanting twice wages and stuff, and it's just this bidding war trying to get back and forth. That's the reason why stuff hasn't been delivered to cities to places in cities like San Juan. Meanwhile, the rest of the island that isn't having those problems is getting the relief effort that they need.
Yeah. So, I'm just speculating on this, but this is probably what's happening with this San Juan mayor. She's using this as a stepping stone. She must have some sort of agreement with the Democrats to say,
absolutely.
If you go and attack Trump right now, we will advance your career in the party some way, somehow. Okay, she might want to get off the island at some point and actually get into some bigger politics. This is her avenue to do so. And it's also... And it's funny, she's willing to fuck over her own citizens to advance herself in such a circumstance. But she also, there's quotes of her in the past years back where she's supporting Puerto Rican liberation terrorists or whatever.
Oh,
have
really?
You seen this stuff?
I have heard of it a little bit, yeah.
Yeah, so she's definitely not an individual that should even be in a position of power if she supported terrorists with prior comments. But that's the kind of people you need to find to do the attack hit that's complete bullshit. So it's an interesting situation out there in Puerto Rico. This is what makes me resent the media so much, because they're actually working effectively in some senses on this.
Yeah, and what else they're trying to do is, I know something that we both wanted to bring up here, was just the whole situation of having Puerto Rico as a territory to begin with.
Yeah, there's been a lot of talk about that. Puerto Rico, debt-wise, is 3 times more in debt than even our most indebted state currently. And it has a fraction of the population. The Puerto Rican situation is a heavy drain on us. Even prior to this hurricane, they were asking for a new bailout of something like $80 billion.
Yeah, because I know they're about $90 billion in debt.
Now, Puerto Rico, it's a U.S. territory. They're not required to even pay any federal income tax. And yet we subsidize out to them to the boatloads. Because, they run this place like a banana republic. Mm-hmm. As long as they know that the United States has their back in the bottom line of things, they don't really care about running their, country efficiently in any sort of way.
And even when companies get subsidies to go to Puerto Rico and do business, after a couple of years, when the subsidies dry up, they just leave. Yeah. They don't stay there. They don't want to do business there.
There's no reason to stay there. Puerto Rico has a population of around 3.7 million people there. Only around 900,000 people even work on the island. A third of the island is on Medicaid. So, the majority of the Puerto Rican population already lives in the United States. There's 5 million Puerto Ricans living in the United States. It's crazy how much we support these people. We just need to cut them off at some point.
And not only that, but, obviously I'm speaking completely just anecdotally here, but every person I know who is of Puerto Rican descent identifies more as Puerto Rican than American.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that's true for a vast majority of them, anyone who actually knows them living here.
They talk about, America is based on racism. It's a legacy of slavery. Okay, Puerto Rico is an acquisition of colonialism, imperialism. We took it from the Spanish in the Spanish-American War. If, the lefties are going to accuse us of this, why don't we just relinquish ourselves of the duty to them?
Precisely, and even when it comes down to that, I've heard multiple ways of going about it. Some people say, let them go, forgive their debts, say just be gone, I don't want anything else to do with you. Some people have been all like, kick them out, but still make them owe us their debt. I personally am on the side with, let them be independent. They are a net negative drain on taxpayers and federal government money and everything like that. I don't want them to be a territory. Anything we can do to get rid of them as a territory, let people travel as they do between normal countries. But, those people, they don't vote, or at least, they do kind of vote in elections and stuff. They certainly send delegates to conventions. And a lot of people are like, the left is going to try to use this to meme them into, we need to bring all those people here because they don't have money or resources or anything like that. I don't want that to happen, because all those people are going to do is they're going to move here, register to vote, and vote Democrat.
Yeah, and the left knows this, and that's why it encourages this. The left
and they're open about it, too.
They're very open, and they're very brazen about how they do this. I just wanted to quickly look on our database on representatives. Is Puerto Rico's representative a Republican or
Puerto
a
Rico's
Democrat?
representative right now is a Republican.
Yeah, I was going to say I believed it was Republican.
So when we were discussing earlier about the San Juan mayor and her political aspirations, I doubt that would be the position that she would want to run for.
Yeah,
as the Democrat for that, because that's simply, it's not a voting position. It's just a representative to be in Congress. So I doubt she would want something where she couldn't actually get anything done. So I'm on your side for that. I think that she'd probably want to come to the U.S. and run for some sort of political office or move her way up the Democratic Party chain somewhere into Washington or at a state level somewhere. That's what seems like she's going after right now.
Yeah, she wouldn't be fighting so hard if there wasn't anything in for it for her. It wouldn't make sense. But yeah, the Puerto Rican representative is Jennifer Gonzalez. She's a Republican. She got elected in 2017. I don't know how Puerto Rico generally votes. We don't have the spread on that, but
well, all I do know is that in the primaries, at least, they voted for Marco Rubio.
Yeah.
For the Republican primary, and I believe they voted for Hillary Clinton in the Democratic primary. So that tells you everything you need to know about their politics down there, even on the Republican side.
So yeah, they're not down with any sort of Trumpianism at all.
Absolutely not. Like I said, this is completely anecdotally. Every Puerto Rican I know hates Trump to the bone.
Yeah.
And I've tried to explain to a couple of them the situation that's going on with relief efforts and stuff. They completely just disregard it and focus back on the narrative that's being pushed by the media and whatever right now.
Yeah.
It's not like those people actually, to me it almost seems like they don't even care about their own people. They're just trying to use this as any way to get at Trump.
It's strange how this whole thing's going. Not to say that they haven't been hit hard, because they have been hit pretty hard.
No, it's absolutely devastating tragedy is what happened.
To use the tragedy for, like, political gain against Trump, like, we've already seen with the prior hurricanes that have hit the United States, Trump just takes this stuff seriously.
Yeah.
There hasn't been... I can't knock him for that. I don't even think people on the left really can knock him for what he's done with the hurricane.
They've attempted to, especially Hurricane Harvey, which caused a lot more damage than Hurricane Irma did in Florida. You know, the response to that, even from the left that lives in Texas, was like, thank you, Mr. President, you've done an outstanding job.
Yeah.
All the criticism comes from people that don't actually live there.
Yeah.
And in Florida, you know, Florida didn't get hit as hard by Hurricane Irma as was expected. But even then, his response to that was equally as much as it was to Hurricane Harvey, even though it was just less damage. And he's doing everything he possibly can, using all the resources the federal government has at their disposal to help out Puerto Rico. Because as we said, they are still an American territory. They are still American citizens. But at the same time, what are you going to do when you're doing everything you can and that's still not enough for people?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't have anything else on Puerto Rico though to say. Do you?
No, I don't.
Let's move on to the next thing that we have here then, and that is Tom Price resigned this week.
Yes, and he was the Secretary of Health and Human Services. Now, this entire situation came up, which led to his resignation, was because of criticism over his use of private plane trips.
Yeah.
And this happened, you know, back a couple of months ago and whatnot, where he was attending different events in Philadelphia, which, keep in mind, is only about 135 miles from D.C., and he chartered private planes to fly him from Dulles Airport in D.C. out to Philadelphia, and then one to New Hampshire as well, and he got the taxpayers to foot the bill for that. See, if it was just like government aircraft travel stuff, that's one thing, but this was like chartering private planes, private jets, to fly out. He also flew to, he used a government-funded private jet in August to fly to St. Simon's Island, which is a Georgia-like resort hotel-type island where his family owns property, before he went to a medical conference. So he's using this also for like semi-personal gain, not just business work. And it is reported that he's cost the taxpayers about $500,000 in travel expenses. Now, this is somewhat related to Betsy DeVos, our education secretary, using private planes, but she is completely paying for that out of her own pocket.
Yeah.
So that's why that story just died off after about a day.
They try to push that narrative, and they've been trying to attack Betsy DeVos on a side tangent so hard. But that's, you know, it's been unreasonable. This is an instance where the dude is guilty.
Yeah,
I want
guilty.
You gone.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
and I'm not sure how
we have to hold ourselves to a different standard than leftists on these
Absolutely,
things.
and you know, I'm not sure how well Tom Price has been following the MAGA agenda very much, but you know, once this story kind of blew up, they said that he's going to repay $51,800 of the $500,000, so that's like barely over 10% of what he owes. He's promised to repay. So by like resigning, you know, he's getting off scot-free, and the taxpayers are completely fit with that bill.
But if he didn't resign, Trump was going to fire him anyways.
He would.
That's why he did.
Yeah.
He did it to save face. So, I don't know. I don't really have a huge opinion on Tom Price, but we'll see what happens with this.
I guess the only thing I would say is I'm glad that he resigned before the story could become bigger. Because if he hadn't resigned and Trump kept him in the administration, like as they were gathering more info and stuff like that, it would look bad on Trump.
Yeah.
So you're absolutely right. He would have fired him. But by him resigning, it makes it simple.
It's funny that you even say that, because there's a certain Democrat from New Jersey that I think needs to resign pretty soon. You know, Bob Menendez. Did I say that right for once?
You did, finally.
I said that right for once. Bob Menendez, he's on trial for a lot more money than Tom Price is, and he's probably going to be convicted soon here in November, and he's not going to resign.
You don't hear a peep from the mainstream
There's
media
not going to be
story.
a single thing about it. We talked about this last week. We had polling numbers on how this came out. Over what? It was something like 95% of mainstream media was not even reporting on the biggest corruption scandal in the Senate in decades.
Yeah.
I guess I want to let that out. But
he's going to get convicted, and, the left is going to look bad if they, and we've talked about this in the show, the left is going to look bad if they don't force him to resign.
but they want to wait it out to June 12th because that's when Chris Christie is likely going to be replaced with a Democrat. And as it stands law-wise in New Jersey, the governor gets to choose if there is a new vacancy in the Senate, as opposed to other places like in Arizona, that's not the case.
Yeah, like Arizona, the governor has to replace them, but can only replace them with a member of the same party as the person who resigned or died or whatever.
Yeah, so they don't have that in New Jersey. So technically, because Menendez's trial is mid-November, if he can get convicted between then and January 12th, Chris Christie gets to choose us a Republican senator that will stay there until the 2018 midterms.
Right.
We'll gain a new seat in the Senate without even an election.
And the left does not want that to happen
Which is why the media doesn't talk about this, because they don't want people mad about this.
Because if people were mad about this, they would be forced to act, and that's exactly
this
what
is
happened.
the double standard. Tom Price is getting attacked on way less than Bob Menendez is, and the left, I guess they don't truly know that this is even happening on their team, but I don't know.
I mean, you ask people on the right, they've at least heard of the situation. Anytime you mention the left, they just ignore it.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of them do know about it, but as we said, they're just looking for any opportunity to not talk about it. Because the more that gets out, the worse it looks for them, the better it looks for our side, and the worse it looks for them trying to defend it as well. So they just want that swept under the rug, let it happen in the background, no one talk about it. Let it wait until the midterms, and then replace him with someone else. Because at this point, I don't think, is New Jersey a state that has an open senator? Or is Menendez running for re-election in 2018?
No,
he's not. So, yeah, he'll resign. They'll replace him with another Democrat here next year because he's probably going to get convicted.
But, okay, here's the thing, listener. Let's say Bob Menendez is convicted prior to January 12th. There's nothing that actually requires him to resign.
Right.
He could just stay in jail, be sweeping the floor. And, he's not on the Senate floor to do any votes.
So it just count as a not voting.
Yeah, which, I mean, it's not like the Democrats are going to try to pass any legislation anyways. He's essentially fulfilling the same role that he was before.
Mm-hmm.
But it's going to look terrible if they do that, so it's very fun.
Yeah, whereas in the House of Representatives, there are rules regarding, if you get convicted of a felony or anything like that, you're out, you're gone. You're right. The Senate, you could be a mass murderer and kill 100 people, and they would throw you in jail, and you'd still be a senator until your term is up.
Yep.
So it's very, very interesting how hypocritical that whole situation is.
Yeah, but I don't know. I don't have any more on the situation. I just think it's funny that Tom Price is in the media shine-light and Bob Menendez isn't.
So hopefully, as that trial or that corruption trial moves on and gets closer and actually happens, hopefully the media will pick up on that more. At least I know right-wing media will.
Yeah, we had to put the pressure on it with our platforms.
Yeah.
Let's move on to the next thing that we have here, and that is Trump is preparing a new executive order. Most people say that it's probably going to come out next week.
Right. That's what I've heard as well. So his executive order, and this is something I think we both completely support.
Yeah.
We've talked about this before. He's preparing an executive order to let Americans purchase health insurance across state lines. This is something that, we've talked about this on our healthcare midweek episode that we did and what we'd like to see with the new healthcare bill.
Which is many months ago now.
Yeah. And this is something that pretty much everybody on the right has been wanting to try to make healthcare cheaper. I mean, this alone destroys a lot of Obamacare's problems.
In some ways, it's an improvement.
It is an improvement.
And that is the ability to buy insurance across state lines.
So what this really does is it gets states like Arizona and Iowa where
they only
premiums
have
are up over 100%, or they only have one or zero providers. You can say, well, hey, maybe Texas has a plan that's better. I live in Iowa. I've got no suppliers left. I'm going to buy it from Texas. What that also can do is, as this goes on, healthcare companies know that they're now in competition across the country as well. And that will increase benefits, and that will reduce prices as time goes on. So, like I said, this alone, it doesn't fix all of the problems that have been caused by Obamacare, but it does go a long way in reducing prices over the next few years.
And it does incentivize the market to work in a way that will benefit consumers. if people want to make money in the insurance industry after you do an executive order like this, they want to be able to cover the entire country.
Yeah.
And to do that, you have to provide more services to the, American people. And if you want to be competitive in these new markets, you have to either have better service or provide lower deductibles. So either way, the American, citizen's going to benefit from this.
And this also comes, this wouldn't have been something that Trump would even have to do if Congress would have acted and actually done Obamacare. If we would have gotten Obamacare passed, or the repeal of Obamacare passed, I should say. Because
all three repeal bills had this.
Yeah, they did. And especially, John McCain's one vote, and then the last bill, which kind of just died after no one talked about it.
Yeah, they didn't have the votes, so they didn't bother.
No, they didn't. So, I am glad that Trump's doing this, and I'm not quite sure if this executive order counts as writing legislation or not, as regards to just ordering the executive branch to do something. I guess, because I'm not sure if that's even a law that says you can't do this. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or this is just saying I'm allowing,
Because it kind of relates to, interstate commerce,
yeah,
which is a function
which would have
of
to go
Congress.
through Congress. Congress does have to do anything regarding that.
But I know, Senator Rand Paul has been talking to the president about this stuff, and that's the reason why he's pursuing this. Mm-hmm. I don't know if he knows something that we don't in terms of the executive branch doing this, but yeah, I don't even know if he does have the authority to do this or not.
And that's one of the biggest complaints that people had about President Obama was a lot of the executive orders he did were pretty much writing legislation as opposed to just ordering the executive branch to follow the law, enforce the law. Whereas it's possible that might actually be a law, but all the executive branch has to do is say, we're not going to enforce that.
Yeah.
And if that's the case, then this would be legal. Because even though stuff is law, it doesn't mean you have to actually enforce it. So yeah, this is definitely going a long way to help people. I'm not quite sure entirely how legal this technically is.
Yeah.
But you know what? At this point, I don't even care.
But that said, this should be bipartisan, I believe.
You'd think so.
You'd think that this would just make sense to most people. But, we haven't been able to get any sort of healthcare reform done. And, there's just a lot of small elements you could do to try and fix this situation. And this was one of the, plethora of different ideas that have been thrown at the situation. All of the different things that these bills would have done, especially the second one, which is, in my opinion, the best one that they could have passed. But, I don't know. If we can't pass any sort of healthcare bill, I guess this is good, too.
And, I'm also kind of interested in what type of precedent this sets going forward. If Congress still refuses to act or isn't able to get stuff done, Trump is saying, fine, you're not going to do it, I'm going to do it myself.
Yeah.
Which, I kind of like that side of Trump, personally.
And, if this does work in the way that we believe it will, I mean, this is going to look good for him.
Oh, yeah, and keep in mind, you're not going to see immediate changes. It's going to be a couple of months down the line before more data starts rolling in and we really see the full effect of what this executive order actually has to do. So don't freak out if 2 weeks later it doesn't seem like anything's happened yet. You know what I mean? So
these insurance companies would have to, expand their employee, their payroll to even start covering the entire country.
It might even be another year.
They need more capital to do it as well.
Precisely. It might even be another year
before you start feeling the impact of it.
But that being said, you need to act. You need to have acted yesterday. So at least they're finally getting something done.
Yeah. Which, a good way you could, stimulate the insurance companies to do such a thing would to give them some tax cuts.
Yeah.
Which is another thing that we're going to talk about next.
Right now.
Because Trump gave a speech on tax reform this week in Indiana that we both watched.
Yeah, we watched that live. And he was pretty much just trying to sell his plan to the crowd that was there. And this was when he kind of unloaded and unveiled what the Republicans' tax plan was, which we'll kind of get into some of the details here of that in a second. But, he kept using the same, words he's been using, like these are going to be significant tax cuts. There's never been tax cuts like we're talking about, which is pretty much how things are going. But he held the speech at the Farm Bureau building in Indianapolis. And it's actually pretty funny. We were watching one part where he had Senator Joe Donnelly, who was the Democrat senator from Indiana who was elected back in 2012, I believe. Yeah, because they're one of the ones that's up for re-election. So that's
and he's not polling good right now.
No,
he's due up this year.
And that's one of the seats that we believe is probably going to go red in the Senate in 2018.
Very, very likely.
I'd give it about a 75-80% chance personally. But Trump called him out even. He was saying, call your congressmen, call your senators, let them know you're watching, let them know you're waiting. Tell them that today is the day for decision, that now is the time to heal the self-inflicted economic wound. He added, if you demand it, the politics will listen. And he and he pointed straight at Donnelly, and he was pretty much saying, if you don't support the plan, we will come here and we will campaign against him like you wouldn't even believe.
Yeah,
so Trump, to his face, said, if you do not support tax cuts, I'm going to endorse your opponent and you are going to lose.
And the crowd cheers.
They did. They loved it. It was fantastic.
It was great.
And but that kind of brings back to the point that we've been pushing on this show as well, in that I do believe that even with the failures of healthcare, tax reform is going to be something that's probably actually going to get at least something done, because there are a lot of senators like Joe Donnelly, Democrat senators in states that Trump won big, that are at risk and polling very unfavorably right now, to where they're going to be forced to know, if I oppose tax cuts, I'm going to get either primaried out or I'm going to lose in the election. And that goes for Republicans and Democrats that don't like Trump's agenda. And the last thing they want to do is lose re-election over something stupid like that. And a lot of them know their time is coming.
And we've already seen that there's some Democrats having meetings with Trump, your blue dogs.
Yeah.
Like Joe Manchin in West Virginia. They have already said that they are looking to work on tax reform with Republicans.
I mean, Joe Manchin in West Virginia, he's pretty much a Republican
right now. He's essentially,
yeah.
A lot of these guys are. But a lot of these guys in, deep red Trump states that just so happen to be Democrats and are looking at the, short end of a 2018 election, and they have bad poll numbers right now, which is a lot of guys, I could go into the names, but we have on the show many a time. Mm-hmm. They're going to get on with this. They don't see this as something that can't be bipartisan, which I don't think the Democrats are happy about at all.
They aren't.
But they're also not going to fundraise to protect these guys' seats either.
Nope.
So, they have incentive to, buck their own party on this.
And not only that, I think we should kind of go into just a few of the things that the Republican tax plan actually does. So as part of this plan, it nearly doubles the standard deduction to $12,000 for individuals and $24,000 for families, which was part of Trump's tax plan as he had it. Now, as it comes right now, they're also talking about having a larger zero tax bracket, which is believed to be around $50,000 or so for individuals or families and whatnot. So, like, if you earn less than that or up to that point, you don't have to pay any federal income tax, which we're on board with, because I don't think poor people should have to pay federal income tax as it is. And even then, the amount of income tax they paid as a whole is like hardly anything anyways. So you'd be helping out lower class and lower middle class people without having any negative effects to the federal government as it is. Now, the individual tax rates, they would drop from 7 to 3. And the 3 would be 12%, 25%. Yes. 12%, 25%, and 35%. Which isn't as good, because they were talking about it being like 12, 20, and 30 or something along that lines. Or, 10, 20, and 30.
Yeah.
So even though that's not as low as people wanted, it's still a little bit higher, right? So if you're a Democrat and you're on board with at least trying to do something, you don't want it to be super, super low.
It's a better compromise.
It is a very...
It's more feasible. Yeah. We knew that we were going to move on this. Another situation that we've been watching with this tax reform stuff is the corporate tax rate. In Trump's plan, they're aiming for 15%, but at the moment they're talking 20%.
Yeah.
Which is still very good. I mean, if we can get corporate tax rates down to 20%, our corporations are going to take off like nobody's business.
Yeah.
And a lot of money is going to be coming back.
Absolutely. And that's why they've talked about the money that's held overseas, have it come back at a one-time tax.
Yeah, was the one-time tax holiday for them?
Yes. Just bring it back, pay one-time tax, and you're good.
So you'd see hundreds of billions of dollars.
Trillions.
Trillions of dollars sitting overseas, not being used because our corporate tax rates are so high, it prevents them from even bringing this money over. Not only will they bring this money back into the United States and spend it on our own economy, or invest in something here, or start a new company. They could do so many different things with it. It's so asinine that we don't do this, and also when we do this, it's going to encourage people to bring their headquarters here.
Right, and that's part of what Trump's plan was all along, was saying, look, get especially manufacturing type companies, come back, have penalties for companies that leave the United States, and award those companies who stay here or move here. And also, one of the things it does is it takes, there are some people out there who are like sole proprietorships and stuff, where the money is their business, that's their income.
Yeah.
So those people, the profits their business makes, that counts as their income for the year. Millions of people across the country do that. They are taxed at 39.6%. Okay? That's dropping down to 25%. So that alone literally lowers the tax in small business, almost by half. And small business tax cuts can go, in ways can go a lot farther than
because you
big
turn
businesses.
Small businesses into bigger businesses when you give them cuts like this.
Yeah. And also because that money, that's an individual person or an individual's family's income for the most part, a lot of those places. So we're not talking about helping out the big corporations. We're talking about helping out, Jimmy down the street who owns his diner is who we're talking about.
Yeah.
And but one of the other things that the Republican tax plan does is it eliminates the estate tax.
I was just going to get into that, actually.
Yeah, I'll let you go ahead and talk about it.
Well, the estate tax is also known as the death tax. It is the percentage that the government takes from people's estates above a certain threshold of dollars in income. That, it's money taken that would be given to your own family in your death, and it's going to the government. And, when people talk about the estate tax, they always, think of it only as it's rich people, so it's okay to screw them over. It's not only rich people. One of the people that are hurt most by the estate tax are farmers. I actually have a personal anecdote on this that I've mentioned many times before on the show that I guess is just apt to bring up again. And that is, I'm from Wisconsin. My aunt had a farm out in Wisconsin. My aunt is dead. She died many years ago, back in 2013. But my aunt, when she was dying of cancer, she had to divorce her husband of over 30 years and cede the entire farm over to my uncle. Because if she died married to my uncle, she would have estate tax on the farm, and they wouldn't be able to put up the money to pay the tax, so they'd have to sell the farm. Because, beef farmers in Wisconsin, they don't make any money at all. Mm-mm. Farming, it's very, close margin on the stuff. So when you're taxing these people that have very close margins that are still, important things to have, it hurts us as consumers as well. Not just the individual farmer. It causes prices on food to go up as well when you do this. So, the estate tax is really messed up. Do you have any other thoughts on the estate tax?
I mean, similar situation that happened with my family. When my grandmother died back in 2014, all the money she had in her bank account was in a couple of trusts and whatnot. And we had that stuff, to be transferred over to my family because my father was an only child, so it all went to us. And when that happened, it was over a year and a half before we even got all that stuff fully transferred because of the estate tax. We had to refile old year's tax returns, and the tax rate that we had for the year after she died, because that all counted as our income for the year, we got bumped into a higher tax bracket because of that for that 1 year. And, it's just a complete pain. It shouldn't be there. If you die and you have money saved for your family or land for your family, it should go to your family. The federal government should have no business at all being part of that.
It disincentivizes giving back to your family, preparing for when you die to give back to your family.
Precisely.
So, it's messed up.
But one of the other things it does is they're looking to eliminate the AMT, which is the alternative minimum tax. Now, essentially what that does, I think we've described it on the show, but I'll describe it here real quick. The alternative minimum tax, if you're a richer person who uses a lot of itemized deductions, you have to fill out a completely separate tax return that doesn't allow you to take as many deductions. And at the very end of it, whichever one has the higher amount of taxes that you would pay, that's the one that you have to pay. So it essentially, by getting rid of this, allows people to, it does lower their taxes because it's designed to be a higher rate than normal.
Yeah.
So people would have lower taxes there. Now, one of the problems that people are seeing here is that the current plan is eliminating a lot of the itemized deductions, but by doubling the standard deduction and lowering the rate, essentially by doubling the standard deduction, a majority, like I'm thinking, I'm pulling these numbers out of my butt, but they're fairly correct. Something like 75, 80% of people that itemize their deductions don't itemize to the amount that it would be double what the standard deduction is.
Yeah.
Most people just take the standard deduction as it is. You're only itemizing if you pretty much have a lot of money to begin with and you're doing a lot of different things. I mean, I've taken a class in taxes, and so we went over this in great detail.
Wasn't there another thing during the speech they mentioned, writing off like first-year deductions for equipment for businesses?
Yeah, that's right. So what they were saying was that as it currently stands, if a business or whatever buys some equipment, like a tractor or whatever, what they have to do is they have to deduct that over several different years. Okay? So like if it's expected to last you like 10 years, price divided by 10, that's how much you can deduct each year. Now, the way they want to do is you say, okay, that costs you $500,000 for that tractor. This year, boom, you can deduct $500,000 from when you're figuring out what taxes you have to pay, as opposed to just $50,000 if it was to last you 10 years. Now that incentivizes people to spend more money on equipment and stuff like that would be covered on that.
That will expand businesses.
Yeah, or let's say it's I'm not saying it's near the end of the year, but let's say it's October, whatever, your year is ending, you're doing the math, and you're like, well, we were thinking about buying this tractor in January, but if we can buy it now and get an extra deduction instead of waiting, we'll pay less taxes this year. And then by the time next year comes around, we won't have to spend that money that year. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So again, it incentivizes people to invest in their own companies, invest in the economy now, not later, and more so even, if you know that you can write it all off right now.
And this, the various different elements of the tax plan that we've been talking about, the last 10, 15 minutes, it's all part of a grander plan to boost the economy. And, Mnuchin has talked about this, Steve Mnuchin, our Treasury Secretary.
Right.
He wants to backdate taxes to the beginning of this year. Mm-hmm. So if we were able to do this before, 2018 comes around, this could be the tax rate for everyone coming in.
It could be, yeah.
And if people know about this a month in advance, they're going to plan their corporations and their businesses thinking with this in mind. So, we're currently at 3.1 GDP growth, which is great, which is, we've never had 3% under Obama. We could get up to 4 or 5% with good tax reform. Things are good right now. We're going to get into the economics, pretty soon here. It's something else thinking about it. I can't comprehend what it'd be like to have growth like that.
It would be fantastic. And, Trump was saying that our priority is the middle class.
Yeah.
And if you look at all the different things that have been released through this tax plan, the middle class does benefit. Now, in some ways, the rich people, it actually might raise taxes on them. And I'll get to the reason why. What it does is by removing a lot of the deductions, they're leaving in the mortgage interest and charitable giving deductions, which are what most people use when they do itemizing.
Which are very popular.
You need to leave those things in there. You can't touch those. That's the third rail of tax reform, in a way. But what it does is it's also reducing the deduction you can take for state and local taxes that you've paid. So if you're in a high income tax state like California or New York, you suddenly can't deduct that. In California's got 10-12% income tax that people are paying. So if you're a rich person living in one of those states, all of a sudden your taxes just went up.
Yeah.
Now, that's good and that's bad. That's good because, I don't want people to be living in those states anyways. And what that does is it almost kind of incentivizes those states to lower their taxes.
Yeah.
But they don't want to do that, because they got
So they're going to scare their tax base
they got
away
all these
like they
government
have
programs.
been.
Right. So all the people that are actually making money, that are the reason those places even have the money they have, they're going to move to states like Texas or Tennessee or New Hampshire, or places that at least have lower tax rates even. You're driving out your tax base by doing that. And that is intentional as part of the Republican Party's plan. Because, you can look at it. It's the blue states, the solid blue states that have high income taxes. You're going to drive out what tax base you have there. And that screws over those states, which I think is good. Looking at it from that state, that's bad.
Well, it encourages them to, as you said, lower their taxes.
And they're not
which
going
is what
to,
we want. So.
But they are not going to lower their taxes as long as they keep those programs that they have. So in a way, it also, in the long run, incentivizes those states to reduce spending or reduce programs.
Yeah.
And they might actually get away with it. Because like we said, a lot of poor people, $100 a month goes a long way. So if you can reduce the amount of taxes that they have to pay over a year by like $1,200, that $100 a month might mean the difference between being on welfare and off welfare.
Yeah, it's the
on
difference.
Food stamps and off food stamps. So if those people suddenly don't have to be on those programs, the states don't have to spend the money. So they don't need to be bringing as much money either.
It's enabling social mobility,
right,
which is, always our goal with these sort of things.
And the one thing that people always get mistaken on is understand the whole point of taxation. As the tax code currently stands, it's like 75,000 pages long. The purpose of that, in a lot of parts, is not to generate money for the government. It is to drive people's behavior.
Yep.
And that happens over and over and over again, especially in business type, when you get into business taxes rather than individual taxes. So the way that this is doing is just trying to get people to incentivize them to invest in America, invest in their companies, invest in themselves, get off government programs, get yourself working again. And as we were mentioning before about Democrats that are talking about getting on board with this, I think we're looking at some really good progress that we can get done here.
Yeah. We haven't seen major tax reform since the Reagan years, and if we do this right, we're going to see growth in jobs, rises in wages, and, overall economic prosperity like we haven't seen in decades.
And the last thing I wanted to mention, which was a part that I mistakenly skipped over, was that the current tax credit that they have for child tax credits is currently $1,000 per child. Now, they're talking about, as Trump was saying, and this is actually something that Ivanka Trump mentioned back right after Trump even got the Republican nomination at the RNC last summer, was letting people deduct the full cost of childcare, deduct the average cost of childcare, even if the amount that they pay is less than that.
Yeah.
So what that does is that also lowers taxes for poor people who don't make as much money, single families that are young that don't have as much money as well. But what it also wants to do is add a new $500 tax credit to help pay for elderly and sick people who are claimed as dependents by the taxpayer. So if you've got grandma who lives down the street, who grandpa dies, and all of a sudden she has no money coming in besides like Social Security, and she's getting old, and you suddenly have to start taking care of her, that money that you can spend, you can use her as a write-off if you list her as a dependent, which a lot of people do. But this gives them an even bigger break. So people that are taking care of their sick family members and older family members, they get a benefit as well.
Which, like I've said on the show before, like ideologically, we're very pro-family in a lot of the ways we do it. We're not afraid to spend money if it's good for families. Because, good, strong families is good for America in general.
Yeah.
And also having the write-off on, child care increases productivity in the workforce, which, also plays into increasing our GDP. So this is part of as we said before, a larger scheme to increase, productivity in every single facet.
And as I said before, it also tries to drive behavior. So using that child care example, for instance, if you do the math and you figure out that childcare is going to cost you $3,000 for a year, and you're like, I don't have $3,000, but the average cost of childcare, let's say, is $3,500, you say, well, I can deduct $3,500 at the end of the year if I put my children in childcare instead of, forcing my wife to stay home or my husband to stay home and take care of the kids full time.
Instead, they're working, getting more money.
Exactly. And so they can work, they can get more money, so that alone helps pay for that. They can deduct that off of their taxes at the end of the year. It helps everybody. And that's just, one little instance. But you talk about everything we've been talking about the last 20 minutes on this. That drives people's behavior in a way that is good for this country.
Yeah.
So I think we pretty much talked about all we're going to be
very thoroughly went over this tax stuff, but we know a lot about the subject, and it's very important. This is the number one legislative piece at the moment. So,
and I think that with the failure of healthcare, if they can get tax reform done, that gives them some momentum going into the primaries and some momentum going into 2018.
And could get us some House seats that we need.
It can at least save us some of those close seats that you'd be like, are we going to lose this? We might lose it. We might not lose it. We can save those seats. And also the blue seats, they want to save their seats too. And granted, I want the Democrats gone, but I understand that they are in a very desperate situation too. And they're going to be more willing to compromise on this.
Yeah.
So that's all I have to say.
Let's go into the last thing we have before we get into some economic numbers, and that is Steve Scalise is returning to Congress for the first time since the shooting this summer.
Glad to see Mr. Scalise, Congressman Scalise, the House Majority Whip, making his way back to the floor of the House of Representatives for the first time. He was shot back in June by that Bernie Sanders supporting terrorist. But that being said, he received a standing ovation from both sides. Everyone was glad to see him back. He was happy, he was walking, he was strong, and I'm glad he's back because he hadn't been able to vote or do anything while he was recovering in the hospital. So this is good news.
I'm so on this. I'm glad he's alive, of course.
Oh yeah, of course.
Of course. Steve Scalise, he's a representative from the 1st District of Louisiana. He's the GOP whip in the House. So he forces everyone to follow the party line. So I haven't, generally liked the party at the moment. So, yeah, I'm not really glad that an establishment guy is back. You look at this guy's voting record, Conservative Review does a Liberty score on how, conservative these guys vote. It's 0 to 100. He only has a score of 63. So he doesn't vote well generally at all.
Yeah.
And Numbers USA has an immigration grade that they give out for senators and representatives as well. He has an F- score. So he's not a guy that we want in the House at all.
No.
So he's screwing up the Trump stuff very hard. So I'm glad you're back, but don't get comfortable because I want you out of your seat. Not that I think that he will lose his seat, though. He got that back in 2008. The district that he's in is lean R plus 24.
Yeah.
So a Republican wins that seat no matter what. He probably has the establishment money. I don't know who his competitors are in his House race for the primary, but I'd like him to be primaried.
And I doubt that's going to happen.
Yeah, I doubt that too.
Just look at it from a logistical standpoint. If you're the Republican running against the guy who just got shot and survived,
it's probably not going to happen.
That's not going to work well for you. So that's one of those times where, as much as I agree with you, I'd like to see him gone with a different Republican that's more pro-Trump. He's not going anywhere.
So yeah, Steve Scalise is pretty swampy, but he's not going anywhere. I don't know what to tell you.
And he'll probably remain the House Majority Whip for the foreseeable future, probably for the next couple of years.
Yeah,
I bet.
Unless something big happens, like we get a different House Speaker.
Yeah,
which would be amazing.
I would love for that to happen.
But I don't know if that's happening anytime soon.
Yeah, so
we gotta pray for Paul Nealon. Pray for him.
He's running against Paul Ryan in the Republican primary in Wisconsin's 1st congressional district.
Yeah, it's gonna be hard though. To have a position in the GOP, I don't know how this works for the Democrats, but you have to pay to have a title. Steve Scalise is the House Majority Whip. I believe they have to pay around to the RNCC around $5 million for the position Scalise has.
Is that per year?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah, he's getting a lot. Okay, so you look at what committees he's on. Steve Scalise is on Energy and Commerce.
And there's a couple more because I haven't fully updated that list
Yeah.
yet.
He's on many committees, so corporations are going to give him donations based on the stuff that he does in committee, which allows him to pay his membership dues to the RNCC. Paul Ryan, to be the House Majority Speaker, he pays $20 million a year. So, Paul Ryan's getting a lot from a lot of people that we don't really like.
And, there, as we talked about last week on the show, the favorability ratings among nationwide Republicans for Paul Ryan and Mitch McConnell, it's like less than 25% each. And among Trump supporters, it's even less than that.
Yeah, so it's interesting. Money is playing a big factor, but as we're going to say when we get into the Roy Moore stuff, it doesn't really matter as much anymore.
No.
It really doesn't. But let's go into the economy now. And that is something that I mentioned earlier. The second quarter GDP has been revised up to 3.1% now.
Yeah, that is the fastest rate that we have seen in several years even. It also proves that the economy at its core is very stable, with steady job growth, a booming stock market, and they said that the growth rate was expected to remain at 3%, according to a survey of economists from the Wall Street Journal. So by going to 3.1, even though that's not too much different, that's still better than expected, which we've seen this continuously, that all the expectations numbers were consistently beating them in almost every single category. Very few of them we actually do like negative as to what it was. But, that was from the April to June period that the Commerce Department said in its third estimate on Thursday. And they also said that, growth last quarter was the quickest since the first quarter of 2015, which was only like a 1.2% raise during that period. So if you think about it, we're greatly going out from these things. Now, they say that the estimates for growth rate in the July to September period are about 2.2%. Now, we had expected, the Atlanta Federal Reserve was saying they expected it to be 3.7% growth in the third quarter.
Hurricanes are going to drag that down.
Because of the hurricanes, that dragged that down. So they were saying it's going to only be around 2.9 or 3 or so, and they're expecting 2.2. Now, as we said, these numbers always get revised after a few weeks or a month or so after they first get released. So the first number will probably be around 2.3, 2.4, which will probably be just above what their expectations are. It might even be right on their expectation, 2.2, maybe even 2.1. But then as time goes on, it's going to get revised, and it's probably going to get revised up. It's rarely ever revised down, at least so far in the Trump administration. So we're probably looking at about 2.6, 2.7% growth for the third quarter. But as we said, if it weren't for the hurricanes, that would be a lot higher.
Yeah.
And those numbers should be expected in a couple of weeks now. They usually release at about mid-end October, somewhere around that, before they start getting revisions. So it'll still be a while before we know that, but that's what's expected.
Which really sucks with the hurricanes. If we weren't having to spend billions upon billions upon billions of dollars to, repair these places, that would be money just spent in the economy. So, sucks with that, but what can you do? Let's get into the next thing that we have here, something I have.
Yeah.
And that is U.S. manufacturers are continuing to have record high optimism about the economy. Now, the National Association of Manufacturers does the largest manufacturer outlook survey in the country. And they've continued to see, through the first quarters of 2017 and into now this third quarter, some of the highest numbers that we've ever seen. Now, in March, they had, amongst all manufacturers who have... so what they do is they ask manufacturers, do they have a positive look on the potential future of their company? And this is based on their perception of the economy. In March, 93.3% of respondents said that they have a positive outlook for their company's future. Now, for the third quarter, that number is at 90.9%. So it is still extremely high. These are the best numbers we've seen in 20 years.
Yeah.
So, you give these guys who are already very optimistic about the future of their companies the right tax breaks. How is it not going to be any less than like 98, 99%? It's crazy. What we are predicting for growth as far as manufacturing going for the first quarter of 2018 is around 3.6%.
Amazing.
That's huge. That is not something to scoff at. And the Democrats are not very happy with these numbers at the moment because this is happening independent of them.
Not only that, but where the manufacturing growth is happening is in states like Ohio and Pennsylvania and Michigan and Wisconsin, places that voted for Trump that used to be blue. And all that's doing is as we said, it's driving people to the Republican Party when Trump runs out there in 2020, stands in front of that factory and says, look what I did for you. That's not going to fare well for the Democrats. So, yeah, they hate this stuff. But also, I'm sure you probably wanted to mention this statistic that they also showed, but I'll go ahead and mention it since I thought it was really cool. 87% of respondents said that a comprehensive plan that includes these tax policy changes, which was the ones that were actually listed by the Republican Party, would address their concerns with the current tax system. So 87% of businesses that have reviewed the policy put out by the Republicans this week said that solves what their problems were with the tax code right now.
Yeah.
So 87% of businesses are essentially saying we support the Republican Party's tax plan that they just released.
And as we said, taxes are primarily incentives. They look at how this tax reform bill is set in front of them, and they said, these are the incentives we need to grow to do the best for ourselves and this country as well.
Right. And 65% of the respondents said that the comprehensive tax plan would encourage their company to increase their capital spending. So we were talking about that just now, about increasing capital spending. 65% said, yeah, we'll probably increase our capital spending. That's going to help them a lot. They also said that 64.3% said that there were people suggesting that they would expand their business, just in general expand their business. 57% said they're going to hire more workers. And 52% said they're going to increase employee wages and benefits. And 34% they're going to invest more dollars in their community. So you have a majority of businesses saying that because of the current tax plan that the Republican Party released, if that gets enforced into law, they are going to increase their employee wages and benefits. Okay, when was the last time you've ever seen a significant increase in employee wages and benefits with the exception of like cost of living adjustments? Rarely ever.
Yeah.
As a whole, just everyone's wages going up. And that's something that, they talk about wages have been stagnant for years now. We finally have an ability to increase wages across the board. 52% of companies saying, yeah, that's our plan. And that number is probably going to be higher as more companies, as they
it's going to
invest more in years to
snowball
come.
as things get
Precisely.
better generally. It's going to enable them to receive more capital, which they'll be able to spend in the various different ways we just outlined moments ago.
Yeah. So again, if you've got businesses on the side of that Republican Party tax plan,
yeah,
at the rate that they are supporting it like that, what we say the number was 87%. How in the world are you going to not be able to get that done?
Yeah, throw in the overseas dollars coming back in that will be available capital to be spent on investing in your company or hiring more people or have hiring wages. Tie this into the money the inflation of wages back up with all the illegal immigration stuff we're doing. Mm-hmm. If we can continue to do that, wages you will see in this country rise for the first time in decades that have been stagnant for decades. And everyone's been looking for relief on this stuff for decades, and their prayers have not been answered. And this is the first opportunity we've had in a long time to actually fix this. And if it wasn't for Donald J. Trump, this wouldn't be happening.
Exactly. So, I have nothing more to say about that. You want to?
Yeah, let's get into the last thing, which is also, I know, an area of that
I normally follow.
You usually take care of.
You want me just to go ahead? And
yeah, you can do it if you want.
Yeah. So as the Dow Jones has posted its first 8-quarter win streak in 20 years, the S&P 500 and the Nasdaq have again reached record levels last Friday. They just keep going up especially because of optimism. They said that the Dow Jones posted quarterly gains of 4.9%. That's amazing. It's the 8th straight quarter of gains for the first time since 1997. It's also the longest since an 11-quarter boom that ended in 1997. They said that among the S&P, the technology sector was up 0.75%, and that was just on Friday alone. So it said for September, the Dow gained 2.1%, the S&P rose 1.9%, and the Nasdaq advanced 1.05%. And so, I think that's great. Yeah. As the numbers keep going up, because all it means is the money that you have invested is worth more than it was beforehand. And the entire reason that those keep going up is because of optimism. That's what drives your company. We said that what was the percentage of those companies that had an outlook in the future? 90%?
90% in the third quarter.
And remember, stock market prices for companies are not based on past performance. They're based on expected future performance about 6 months out. That's the way it's done. So essentially the price you see is what they're expecting, is just a calculation of like what they expect to see of their company 6 months from now. Immediately when the Republicans released their tax plan, those shot up for the week because they were going down the first couple days, and they went up. And so, when you mix that with everything else, yeah, companies want this tax reform, and they like the plan, and that's part of the reason why stuff went up. And if you notice, every single time bad things happen in the government, the market goes down. And the reason it goes down is because they realize the less likelihood there is of passing something like tax reform, that's going to hurt their companies. But whenever you see something happen that increases the chances of tax reform happening, the market goes up because they want it to happen. And a lot of it is reaction to just instability. The markets like stability. Okay? They're expecting Congress to get this done, and they have high hopes that Congress is going to get this done. And that's part of the reason why it's so high. So if Congress fails, I hate to say it, but the market's going to correct itself if that happens. And that's something we do not want to have happen.
And, looking at the numbers that we're talking about with manufacturing, in March they're at 93% to where they're only at 90% positive optimism.
91 actually, if you round it.
91% in the third quarter. That small blip off was because of also the hurricane, but also Congress's inability to get health care reform done. Now,
right.
Taxes is a lot more important to these companies than getting health care reform done. But getting rid of, the business mandated 50 employee rule would have helped businesses a lot.
Yeah.
If we continue to keep screwing the pooch on this stuff, we're going to affect this prosperity that we're seeing that's very fragile still.
And even then, if you don't get if you don't get healthcare done, I mean, as it currently stands with like the Obamacare rules and regarding, you got to have employee like health insurance for your people. A lot of companies can't afford that. So at least if you lower their taxes, they might be able to afford that for a while until healthcare can get done in a year or 2 years or whenever the hell they finally
That's
get
the
done.
hope on it. That's the hope.
Yeah. So even then, as bad as Obamacare is, if you can reduce people's taxes, that snowballs into healthcare as well.
But if you don't get this tax reform done, you're going to end up with a worse healthcare situation in the future because these businesses aren't going to have as much money to be giving to their employees in their health insurance policies.
And plus, you add in Trump's executive order he's going to have this week with buying across state lines. That I'm sure that's going to affect companies as well, because if they know that like something isn't. Like let's say there's a company or a person or whatever, and they're buying health insurance independently. I'm sure that their employee plan that they have has items that they can choose to have and choose to not have. I mean, I'm sure most companies do that, So if you're able to, like if your company doesn't want to offer you something, but you can buy it on the market from some other state, that could save your company money as well because they don't have to pay for something. Especially if you think about like the Hobby Lobby court case regarding like having to pay for like birth control, contraception, that sort of stuff. If any exchange places in your area don't offer support for that, but across the state lines they do, you're going to go with that. Now all of a sudden your company doesn't have to worry about paying for stuff they don't want to have to pay for as well. I'm sure it's it's a lot more complicated than that, but doing this will help companies out and individuals out as well, simply from that executive order as well. And all this stuff runs together, as you notice, as we've been saying.
I don't have anything else to add on this.
No.
I want to get into the one thing we have for science and tech.
Yeah, let's go ahead and do that. So the one thing we have is NASA is testing its newest supersonic jet, which can travel at 2,179 miles per hour. It's being nicknamed the New Concorde, after the Concorde planes that were super fast that ended back in like the early 2000s, I believe. But they've got a new supersonic jet version of the Concorde that they're testing out right now, and it can break the sound barrier faster than any plane's ever been able to break the sound barrier. Not only that, but the prototype project only cost $390 million, which is actually really, really cheap if you think about it, for a NASA supersonic jet not costing over $1 billion a piece. That's something that I'm really looking forward to. But with that speed that they're talking about, it would be able to cut the time in half. I'm sorry. To fly from London to New York using this plane would cut the time in half to around 3 hours and 30 minutes. So you could like take off from New York at lunchtime and be in London at dinner time, and then fly back to New York in order to go to bed. Theoretically speaking, with time changing and stuff.
It's so incredibly fast.
Yeah, I love that stuff. But they said that they're hoping that the flight tests that they have, now when I was saying that they were testing it, that was in like wind tunnels and stuff. But the first actual flight test of it's being called the QSST preliminary design, being named the Plane-X, or the New Concorde is the street name that's being used for it, could begin as early as 2021. So we're still a few years off of actual in-flight tests of this thing, rather than just like wind tunnel programs and that sort of stuff. But they said that President Trump has included funding for this project in his 2018 budget proposal. So this is already something that Trump's known about, he's thought about, and he's approved the funding for.
Pretty cool stuff. We've been seeing a lot of technology just increasing in the speed. It's out of my mind, this kind of stuff, you know? We've been talking about different technology all for months now. It's so similar. Yeah,
this is about the third or fourth story that we've had talking about planes that are able to travel super fast that are, that we haven't seen. Like, we were talking about that plane with Boeing was trying to make that plane that could fly from, Los Angeles to China or Los Angeles to India in 4 hours.
Yeah.
It would pretty much be, you can get anywhere in the world within 4 to 5 hours of flight time, 6 at the most.
We've also talked about on the show, what is it, that pod system that they're developing?
The Hyperloop One?
Yes.
Yeah, like I said, I've been a supporter of that for many years now. They're talking about building that in Texas. You'd be able to travel from San Antonio to Dallas in 30 minutes.
Which, I have to drive up from San Antonio to get to San Marcos to do the show. That takes me around 45 to 50 minutes. If I could take the Hyperloop, it would take me 5 to 10.
It would take you longer to probably wait in line to get in one than the actual trip itself.
Yeah, it would be great.
So we're seeing all these technological advancements everywhere. We've been covering this stuff for the entire time, pretty much, that we've been doing this show. So I'm glad that they're doing it. I'm happy. I personally think that scientific advancements like this, they can't hurt. All they can do is help. They lead to more technological discoveries in the future.
More possibilities.
It's something that you want to see humanity do. And if we have the possibility of doing it, I say do it. So I'm glad that they are doing it.
Yeah, good stuff there.
Yeah.
Let's get into some immigration now.
Open the door! Immigration!
La migra, vamos, niños!
This week in immigration.
So there's a lot of good stuff on immigration this week. Really packed show for immigration. I think this is the best part of the show this week.
Absolutely. I was going to say, this has probably been one of the best weeks in immigration in a very long time.
Probably, yeah, I'd say.
Probably, at least in the last few months. So let's start off with the most important story that we've been waiting to hear since Trump's inauguration. Construction for the border wall prototypes has officially begun.
Officially begun. People doubting the wall, it is in the works at the moment.
So anyone that ever tells you the wall isn't going to happen, there is going to be a wall, it is being built as we speak.
And these prototypes will be part of the final wall. So these prototypes that we're building that are going to help us determine what we want the wall to look like in the future, these will still be used as border walls because these are all very good proposals. It's down to 4 different proposals.
Yeah, the 4 proposals I'll just go ahead and read it off, is a Cattle Construction Company of Montgomery, Alabama, Fisher Sand and Gravel Company of Temple, Arizona, Texas Sterling Construction Company of Houston, Texas, and W.G. Yates and Sons Construction Company of Philadelphia, Mississippi. So, yeah, they're currently building their proposals. The Border Patrol, ICE, and everyone down there are going to test out those ones to see what they like, what they don't like, before the final actual rest of the wall gets built. And as we've said, it's different wall types in different areas depending on what the needs of that area actually are.
And the desires of the Border Patrol agents themselves.
I've heard way too many people that after Trump made his speech, I think it was during his Luther Strange speech that he gave, he was talking about having the see-through parts in the wall.
Yes, that was the Luther Strange speech.
So many people were like, why are you building the wall see-through? What is this? That's not a wall, that's a fence. I'm like, You people haven't been paying attention to what the Border Patrol has been asking for this entire time. That was always part of what they wanted for certain areas, was like a see-through area or see-through parts of the wall.
So then they can see through the fence or wall to the other side. Otherwise, they're driving around most of the time they're doing this. This gives them the visibility to see them coming through. You think it would just make sense to have that feature there. But people have been doubting and, getting down on the wall for so long, but it's finally getting done. And it's not really off time frame either.
No, in fact, we're actually inside the exact time frame they wanted for getting the stuff started construction. Back in January, when Trump was inaugurated, like, we started this show in what, February, late February,
February,
May, somewhere around there. We were saying that their plan was to start construction around September. They started the last week of September, okay? That is precisely part of what they've been talking about the entire time, even with the setbacks and the downturns and the uphill battles and the downhill battles that we have seen through the first 7 or 8 months of this administration. We are completely on schedule, 100%.
But if you are not someone like us who has been having to follow the wall's progress extremely closely, you have no idea. And the media is not going to help you out on this. The media wants you to believe that the wall is not being worked on.
Yeah, so those people get easily depressed.
They get gaslit.
Yeah, very simply. And it's very unfortunate because there's a lot of good stuff that's happening that people don't hear about. And when they don't pay attention and they don't hear about it, all they're going to hear is the bad stuff. And that's going to make them turn on Trump if they are a Trump supporter.
Yeah.
Whereas if they saw all the stuff that's actually going on, they're like, wow, we're making some really good progress, not only in immigration, the border wall, but just all across the country. And you never hear a peep about it.
Not at all. Now, it's going to be about an 8-week period after these walls are constructed where they're going to continue to do tests on it. Live tests.
Yeah.
They're going to see how these walls stack up against illegal immigration, because where they're building this near San Diego does have a big problem, and that's why they chose it out there, because they wanted a good, grounds to actually test this stuff out on. But 8 weeks after we finish seeing this, constructed, we should have final decisions on what the wall is going to look like. And, predictions have been around. We've been seeing the Trump administration around maybe March next year. We're going to start building this wall. So, yeah, nothing is off the timetable at all. If anything, we might get this a week or two early at this point.
And, if you think about it, they started construction last week of September. So, start from right now. It's the first week of August, okay? I'm sorry, October. It's the first week of October. It's probably going to take them a month and a half to finish construction on these things. Maybe 2 months tops. So let's give them 2 months. So that's beginning of November, beginning of December, 2 months of testing, 8 weeks. That's beginning January, beginning of February. So by the end of February, they'll have those reports finished. And by then, they'll be able to submit it, choose one, and then get stuff constructed. So,
and we already have enough funding for at least 100 miles of wall, which, if you don't know how specifically this works, 100 miles is going to go a long way.
Yeah.
You're going to see a drastic drop. The thing is, it's concentrated illegal immigration in specific areas. If you can patch up these places first and foremost, which is how we're going to do this, we're prioritizing different areas, we're going to see a drastic drop in immigration off of the initial funding of the wall that we have right now, which is only like $1.5 billion. We need 20 to get this entire thing done. But even off the get-go of what we have now, there's no need to worry.
Nope. And even if you're worried about funding, okay, we've got enough to fund it for like a year or so.
Yeah.
You get some more pro-Trump people in 2018, they're going to easily sign off for the rest of the construction of the wall for funding and whatever.
That's how it needs to go. We've talked about this many times. The people that are running the primary need to promise to vote for wall funding. If they do that,
they will
against these guys that are counter-signaling the wall, that are saying they aren't going to support Trump, which we talked about last week, there's polling amongst Republicans. Most of them are very squeamish. Only 69 people of Congress that are Republicans are willing to say at the moment they will vote for wall funding. We need to get that number up as high as possible, which is great while we had the primaries coming up just this spring. because I think we are going to see a lot of victories on that front.
And like we said, we already are, especially if you look at polling out of like Arizona with Kelly Ward and Jeff Flake. Jeff Flake is going to lose his primary seat. I think
he will lose in the primary.
That's pretty certain, like 90%.
90%, I
chance,
feel.
unless there's something drastic that happens. He's going to lose his primary
Unless
seat.
he does something that makes everyone love him. But he's
or
writing a book
like
right now.
Or dies or something.
He's writing a book right now about how Trump sucks. So I doubt anything's going to change for him anytime soon.
Yeah, he's not going to be able to raise enough funds off of that book sale in order to fund his re-election campaign. I'll tell you that. Also, if you look at, like, you know, in Nevada, you got Danny Tarkanian is running against Dean Heller for the Republican primary for that Senate seat there. Dean Heller is the incumbent. He's up by like 8 to 10 points in the last polls that we have. I know those were about from a few weeks ago to a month ago, so we haven't seen too many updates there. But even as that stands, you know, you look at the Roy Moore versus Luther Strange election that just happened. We're going to get to that later in the show. But even that proves that the MAGA movement, I guess if you could say, and I know understand that's a very big brush that has a lot of different subsets and sectors inside of it.
Yeah.
But that is a lot bigger than people actually realize it, and they are pissed at the Republican Party's inability to do anything. Like we were saying, we were looking at the polling data. 57% of Trump supporters identify themselves, 57% of Republicans identify themselves as a Trump supporter first and a member of the Republican Party second. Okay, so we already have a majority of Republicans that are willing to say, screw the party, I'm voting for what I wanted to have happen.
Yeah.
And so those people, granted they're spread across the country, they're mad, they are energized, and they're going to vote in the midterms. That's a guarantee.
It's all just a matter of how we rile our base up to do this. Because, you know, either the representatives are going to listen to us or we're going to get them the hell out. That's the only two ways this is going to go. That's the only way that we're going to let this go. We just have to have the enthusiasm and the knowledge to know where these guys need to stay and where to go. And that's why we have, you know, our database on every single House member and every single race. Come the primaries, we're going to be releasing an episode on which, guys need to leave. If you're listening and you might hear someone that represents you, you need to get the word out.
And I'm even thinking about making that thing multiple parts.
Yeah.
To do a lot more people. Multiple weeks long and midweek episodes.
Yeah, we're going to go extremely in-depth on this, so stay tuned.
Yeah. But I guess with that, you want to go ahead and
let's go into the next one.
All
also
right.
Some good stuff.
Yes. So the Trump administration has added some countries to the newest travel ban that they have. They have added North Korea, Venezuela, and Chad to the already countries that they already have on the list. So yeah,
less people coming here.
If you're from North Korea, you're not allowed to come to the U.S. If you're from Chad, you're not allowed to come to the U.S. And the thing is about Venezuela, the Venezuela one did not completely apply to all Venezuelan citizens. It had more to do with like high-level government officials and stuff like that.
We're banning them.
So, you know, I understand Venezuela, they've got their big problems that they have there. We're not banning everybody from that country, although I would like to. But we're not completely banning everybody from that country from coming here. Just the people who have, you know, pretty much created that mess. But that's not why it has everything to do with it. But I guess you can't really call it a Muslim ban anymore when you've got Venezuela and North Korea.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure how Muslim or Christian Chad is. I know it's just right there in the middle of Africa, so it's probably more Christian than Muslim.
I don't know how it splits on this, but
you keep talking. I'll look it up here real quick.
Yeah, but this has been pushed back like we have seen with the past couple of travel bans, which is the right precedent that we want. Because one, when this goes to the Supreme Court, we're winning this. Okay, how the standards and rules practiced towards the president's power, Trump has always been on the right on this stuff. Mm-hmm. So we want to see the precedent of we can add more countries to this ban list.
And the Supreme Court's going to be hearing that court case. They're going to have the oral arguments on October 10th.
Very soon.
So that's, next week's show won't happen, but the 2 weeks from that show, we'll have the data report on that. Now, granted, it still takes a while for the Supreme Court to release their decision after they hear the oral arguments. I understand that. But at least that's happening, too. And I was looking up the data on Chad in terms of Muslim-Christian breakdown. The Muslim-Christian breakdown is 55% to 40%. So, technically, yes, it's a Muslim country, but it does have a high percentage of Christians as well. And that's led to a lot of battles and skirmishes between the different groups in there. I think we covered part of that on our 2017 global conflicts report. It might have been the ones that we left off, but I do remember seeing it there as well. So they've got a lot of Civil War type stuff, along with a lot of those African countries
There's
over there.
There's problems with terrorism in Chad. That's why it's on the list.
Yeah.
They have some elements of Boko Haram in the country, as well as ISIS.
Yeah, so that's understandable. But, yeah, I'm glad we added at least North Korea to the list. So, once the war starts with them, half ironically speaking, we don't got to worry about them coming here.
Hopefully no war. But, yeah.
But, yeah, so that's the updates there, and...
let's go on to some more stuff.
Let's do it.
So, this week, we have a new report coming out. It is coming out of the Federation for American Immigration Reform, FAIR. They always are the ones that are the best on these numbers. Mm-hmm. And they have some numbers on how much illegal immigration is costing the country. This is one of their best reports, most thorough reports they've ever released. And it comes out to the cost of illegal immigrants and their children are costing the American taxpayers around $135 billion a year. Now, people, they always try to throw in the argument that, oh, they're paying taxes, though, so it's fine. Counting all of the taxes tallied up from illegal aliens back in, that's only $19 billion. So, the net cost of illegal immigration to the country is costing the taxpayers $116 billion a year.
That's an overwhelming net negative on the taxpayers. So
they are not good for the country at all.
That's probably the best argument you can ever use whenever people say they pay their taxes. Be like, no, they're
not paying a lot, though.
They take out much, much more than they actually give in. And they're saying that state and local governments, it's costing them $88 billion, where the federal government's only costing them $45. So this is costing the states more than it is costing the federal government as well.
Who are less apt to take care of these problems of illegal immigration.
And a lot of that has to do with free medical care, free education, law enforcement bills, and a lot of that is the reason why. And especially when you have so many places trying to become sanctuary cities that won't deport these people,
it's costing them even more.
Yeah, so
they got the breakdown how this broadly goes.
Yeah, go ahead.
So, costing the American taxpayers broadly, illegal immigrants are taking $29 billion in medical care, $23 billion in law enforcement, $9 billion in welfare, and $46 billion in education. So across the board, it's affecting Americans in negative ways, in different aspects.
And not only that, but they're saying that if you look at the average cost of teaching an illegal alien child who doesn't speak English, it's an average cost of $12,000 a year. And in states like New York, that's $25,000 a year for those children. The average
generally it costs like American students like $6,000, $7,000, $8,000.
Yeah, and that's what they're saying was the average per illegal immigrant person in the U.S., it's costing each state an average of $8,075 a year per illegal immigrant. That's money they should not have to spend at all.
No.
And what's worse is, I was going to say is, if you look at the states that's affecting the most by dollar-wise, obviously California is the largest, and they have the most illegal immigrants. Texas is second. It costs Texas $11 billion a year on paying for illegal immigrants that are here.
$11 billion in our home state that could be spent on our own citizens.
You could theoretically fund people's education with that stuff.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking when I first saw these numbers. I did the numbers on it, actually, now that you mention it.
Yeah, go ahead.
So, this is I hypothetically went over the idea like, oh, lefty, if we can get rid of illegal immigration, I'll do your free college thing. So you take the number that we're losing net-wise, $116 billion. Let's say education is costing someone for a 4-year degree $60,000, which is generous.
That's generous. That is generous for Texas, yeah.
For Texas, yes. How many people do you think you could fund?
Several thousand at least.
Oh, way more than that.
Really?
You could fund full college rides.
For 4 years.
For 4 years. at $60,000, which is more than enough to go to a place like Texas State.
Yeah, Texas State's going to only cost you maybe like 48 or 50,000
Yeah.
for 4 years.
You could, throw housing on that too, whatever. You could fund 1.9 million
Jesus
people.
Christ.
1.9 million people.
That's about the same. That's about the actual number of people in Texas.
Yeah.
Now you said that was just in Texas.
That's
or
nationwide.
Nationwide. Yeah.
Nationwide. I don't know how many people we get in Texas, but 1.9 free colleges. That's
Yeah.
how much illegal immigration is costing you. And you're never going to get free college. You're never going to get it because illegal immigration is too expensive. They talk about the number is going up still. The number has gone up 3.5 billion in the last 4 years. So unless we get this problem fixed, and fixed now, the number's going to go up. And we will never afford your free colleges or your free health cares, even if you want to do them.
And even if you didn't completely pay for all 4 years of those people, but gave just more to the people that are there, you could double, triple, quadruple that number of 1.9. So
Yeah,
let's
1.9.
say 2. You can make that 8, 9, 10 million people that are going to college at significantly reduced prices,
Yeah.
even if you didn't fully pay for it. So yeah, that is amazing. Amazing.
So, some very, very interesting numbers. If you want to look it up, I don't know, go on to FAIR. You can see it yourself.
And I'll just say, when we were talking about the $135 billion that they cost versus the $19 billion that they actually pay in taxes, if you're wondering what that ratio is, that's 7 to 1.
So, yeah, they're taking in 7 more times
What
the
they actually
resources
pay.
than they actually pay out. And this doesn't even take into account, the legal anchor babies that are getting welfare for their family. The costs are so much. It's crazy. Let's get into the next thing that we have here, though. And wait, did you want to get into this welfare thing?
Yeah, I wanted to. I was going to mention that kind of, but we kind of skipped over it. So I'll just say that if
Mention
you look
it
at
now.
simply just welfare alone as part of that, in comparison of illegal immigrants to American families that receive welfare,
Yeah.
illegal immigrants get on average about $1,200 more a year in welfare than American families do.
Yes.
The average illegal immigrant family gets almost $5,700 versus only about $4,400 for Americans right now. So if you look at just the native households versus them, and this is not counting people that aren't on welfare, this is just people on welfare. It's amazing. If you look at what they get per year, especially in Medicaid, and that's where this was really looking at, the native households are about $2,800 a year is the cost. For illegal immigrants' households on Medicaid, over $4,000.
Jesus.
Yes. So,
And that's dollars that could be helping our own sick. And it's going to them.
and if you look at the usage rates of that sort of stuff, 51% of immigrant households, now this isn't even talking about illegals, this is talking about just immigrants. 51% of immigrant households receive some type of welfare compared to only 30% of native households.
Yeah.
Okay, so those people,
I've seen it 6 and 10.
yeah, greatly disproportionately use welfare systems compared to native households. And the rates are even higher for illegal immigrants as well.
Yeah.
Compared to just regular immigrants.
Which is why legal immigration is a giant problem as well. And that goes into the next thing that I was going to go over, and that is chain migration. We have some new numbers from the Center of Immigration Studies on the effect of chain migration, which comes from legal immigration. The average immigrant, legal immigrant, will sponsor through chain migration 3 additional immigrants to come to the United States. And when you control for Mexicans, the number actually even gets much higher. The average legal Mexican immigrant sponsors 6 more relatives to come over. So
Amazing.
when we look at what we're talking about with welfare usage, how it's much higher amongst legal immigrants than the native population, this is what we're talking about. You let legal immigrants come here, and then they send for more of their family to come here, and we pay for them as well. And they do that knowingly that they will receive from the government, because they qualify for everything when they're legal.
Yeah, I was looking at, they have some more key data here. They said over the last 35 years, 61% of all immigrants coming to the United States were chain migrants. from someone who is already living here. 61% of all immigrants. So yeah, that's the majority of immigration. That's almost the super majority of immigrants are people who are not coming here to come here. They're coming here to live with their families as chain migration.
Which is also one of our arguments that we've used against DACA.
Yeah.
Because, if we let the DACA kids stay here, just going over these numbers, DACA, it's over 90% were from Mexico. Not 90, it was over 80%. Over 80% of DACA recipients are from Mexico. The average chain migration for Mexican immigrants is 6 people. You're going to have millions upon millions upon millions of people come in if you just legalize the DACA recipients, which is why it is not negotiable, these people. Because that is millions of additional people that are going to be using state services.
Yeah, as we said, 6 in 10, 7 in 10, depending on what you control factors for, are using welfare services as compared to only 30% of native households. Not only that, the problem is getting worse, okay? They said that in the 1980s, the chain migration multiplier was 2.59 per immigrant. As of 2016, it is 3.45, okay?
Yes.
So that's gone up by over 30% higher in terms of the chain multiplier. That you cannot sustain that forever.
There are repercussions for these things, and that's why we need something like the RAISE Act right now. Now, I don't know if that's feasibly possible at all, but it would be the solution. But let's go into the next thing that we have here for immigration. I think we exhausted that.
Yeah.
We have some new 2018 refugee quotas set, which are the lowest since 1980. For the year of 2018, the United States will be only taking in 45,000 refugees.
And this is kind of another thing that, as we said, what Trump supporters want versus what Trump has actually said sometimes are two different things. I mean, you and me personally, we would love to see 0 refugees at all.
Yes.
But the Trump administration has never said 0 refugees.
I don't think it's attainably legislatively or in our current
especially when you're trying to negotiate with other sides.
Yeah.
You can't just say 0. But, 45,000 is the lowest in decades. What did they say? It was like 1980. Yeah, 1980. And even part of that, they kind of give the breakdown here. They want 19,000 from Africa, 5,000 from East Asia, 2,000 from Europe and Central Asia, 1,500 from the Caribbean and Latin America, and 17,500 from the Near East and South Asia. And so if you think about it, this comes as a difference between Homeland Security and the State Department. The State Department was wanting to bring in 50,000 refugees, but Homeland Security was only wanting to bring in 40,000. So 45 is right in the middle of those two. And that's what was reported by the Detroit News. Now, if you remember back, President Obama set his 2017 goal at 110,000 refugees. So this is less than half of that.
Yeah.
So we're cutting this drastically.
Which, I mean, currently as it stands, refugee admittance is down. Last month was the first month in, I believe it was over 10 years that we had less than 1,000 refugees admitted to the United States.
Yeah.
So it's very significant what's going on currently. And it's going to continue for the future.
And not only that, the travel ban is still in place. So those countries that are on the travel ban, they still can't travel here. They can't be refugees here.
In addition to the countries that we have stopped taking visas from because they won't take back their deportees.
Right.
Cambodia, Guinea, Sierra Leone. I forget what the last one was. But
yeah, whichever one they were. But and also what's in place is still the whole bona fide relationship rule.
Yes.
Meaning that in order to come here as a refugee, you still have to show that you have a bona fide relationship in the United States. So you have to have a family member that lives here. An immediate family member, and I think they added grandparents and aunts and uncles to it. Or you have to have a job already in the United States.
Yeah.
Or, something like that. You can't just be like, I just want to come just to go. Or I just want to come and then hope for the best. So even then, those numbers are down. And I even saw data that said that the majority of the refugees that we're taking in are actually Christian rather than Muslim.
Yeah.
And that matters for a lot of people out there who want to understand that sort of stuff. So even the ones that we are taking in, they're not Muslim refugees. They're Christian refugees.
Think about this. Hillary Clinton projected in her first 4 years, if she became your president, that we would take in around 1.2 million refugees into the country. These are all people that we have to pay for as taxpayers. We pay for every single function of their society, or function that they need to survive in our society. 45,000 compared to hundreds of thousands.
Yeah.
We are saving so much money by not taking in so many.
You said her goal was what for 4 years?
1.2 million.
Okay, 1.2. You divide that by 4. You know what that is?
What?
I mean, 12 divided by 4. It's 300,000 a year.
Yeah.
And we're taking in, what, 45,000?
45,000.
So theoretically, say you keep that number the same. That's 180,000 in 4 years. That's just over half in 4 years as what she wanted in 1 year.
Yes.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And that just shows that, even
Trump
though...
is fulfilling
Yeah.
fulfilling hard with his refugee numbers.
And as we said, we would like to see that be 0. And I want to push to work it and get it as small as it possibly can. But I understand, you got to use baby steps, and you got to make progress, and you got to also negotiate. So by lowering 45,000 this year, you could keep that at 45. You could lower that to 40. You could lower that to 35 next year, or set a goal to drop it to 30 within a couple of years, or something like that. They haven't discussed it yet. So by just lowering it alone, as you said, that does fulfill his promise that he said. He said, I want to cut the number of refugees entering in the United States until we can figure out what the hell is going on.
Yes.
Almost direct quote.
Let's get into the next thing that I have here, and this is some really interesting stuff, and that is part of the Department of Justice, and this ties into immigration, actually. The Department of Justice is filing suits against a company for allegedly not hiring Americans. They're filing this lawsuit against a Colorado corporation for allegedly discriminating against U.S. workers. What they did is, instead of hiring American workers, they used an H-2A visa program to get foreign workers to fulfill these roles in their company. This is corp production, and this
Crop
is
production.
Crop production, and this is for seasonal technicians in El Campo, Texas. Now, to qualify for these visas, they need to show to the United States government that they have a need for these visas that cannot be fulfilled in the American workforce. But up to this point, up until the Trump administration at least, no one stopped these visas. They've just been letting them do it without even checking. Now the Department of Justice is actually going after people that are, conducting business in such a way that is disadvantaging American workers. This is unseen before. The Department of Justice is currently suing 29 different companies. Or they have 29 open investigations of potential discrimination against U.S. workers based on higher preference towards foreign visa workers. So this is something that we haven't even seen before, but now the Trump administration is fighting on the behalf of American workers.
I would like to see them go even farther and start suing even more companies. I mean, like we said, 29, that's a good first start. See how those hold up in court, test the waters a little bit, see how far you can go, and then in the future, sue more companies that are hiring illegal immigrants and stuff instead of hiring American workers. That's the way that you get stuff done. If part of this whole wanting to deport illegal immigrants and stuff, you also have to give negative incentives, or I guess disincentives to companies that hire illegal immigrants.
Yeah.
So you have to make them pay for it. You have to make them negatively benefit. You have to make them hurt. And so this is just one way. And if other companies start seeing that, this company over here is starting to get sued, and this company here is starting to get sued, when is it my turn? When am I going to get the letter in the mail saying that you've got served? You don't know. And so that's going to make companies, the more this goes on and the more this happens, want to not hire them as much as they currently were.
And this is coming off of the backs of the executive order that Trump did back in March, that we actually reported back on the show all the way back then. And here's a quote from Attorney General Jeff Sessions in regards to that. In the spirit of President Trump's executive order on Buy American, Hire American, the Department of Justice will not tolerate employers who discriminate against U.S. workers because of a desire to hire temporary foreign visa holders. Where there are jobs available, U.S. workers should have a chance at it before we bring in workers from abroad. And that's the mentality that we're bringing to it, and it's because of executive orders by Donald J. Trump.
Precisely. And you know what also that does? That raises wages for American workers.
Yes.
Which goes along with what we're saying for tax reform about wanting to see higher wages.
And I wanted to comment quickly on another thing that's kind of tied to this, very similar, that I've seen. Also, out of Pennsylvania, out of Philadelphia, there's a tree company that is being fined $95 million for employing illegal aliens.
And is that just a local company up there?
Yes.
Yeah, $95 million.
The largest fine we have ever seen for someone hiring illegal aliens in the history of the United States. It is Ashplant Tree Experts, based out of Willow Grove, Pennsylvania.
I think that's near Philadelphia.
Yeah, it's near Philadelphia. These guys, they go around and they do tree and bush removal. And, these are actually some pretty solid jobs that they're offering. So these should be jobs that are should be going to Americans. These are jobs that would normally have health care benefits. So not only is the Department of Justice fighting for your civil rights as an American worker, we have the government in general is going after people that are hiring illegal aliens. People are for once fighting for the American workers in this country against the harmful effects of negligent immigration policy.
I couldn't have worded it any better myself. And $95 million, that's not chump change.
No.
Even to a large corporation, that's a heavy, heavy fine.
Yes.
So, as I said, I like to see this continue. I like to see that happen more. It's a great first step, and at least shows that they're willing to actually do that instead of pussyfooting around or anything like that.
Yeah.
So,
I think I want to skip over this next one that we have here.
Okay.
Because I know there's still some developments in Congress on it they're working on.
So we'll go to the next.
Let's go on to the next thing. This is a report from The Hill. The DHS is planning to collect social media information on all immigrants. Not just illegal aliens. This is going to be effective of October 18th. The Department of Homeland Security will be recording information on both legal and illegal immigrants. And we'll be tracking this.
Yeah, it says a new rule published in the Federal Register last week calls to include social media handles and aliases, associated identifiable information, and search results in the department's immigrants files.
And this is in tandem to the thing that Trump did back in May. The Trump administration approved a new questionnaire for visa applicants that required them to put down their social media handles for the past 5 years, as well as biographical information going back 15 years. So the more we know about these people, the better. Because if they fall out of line, they commit a crime, we want to know. And that helps us both in fighting illegal immigration and keeping legal immigrants in line. Because, legal immigrants that do bad things, it's almost doubly as worse because we let them in.
Yeah.
We could have done something about it. So, yeah, some really good stuff happening as far as the DHS is concerned there.
And not only that, but it says the rule filed last week, however, goes beyond would-be visitors to the U.S. and would apply to those who already obtained a green card or gone through the naturalization process. So that's what we already said, that it applies to the people that are here as well. And, I guess that's fine. They're already collecting data on everybody as it is. And whether you want to say that's a Fourth Amendment violation or not, especially if you're looking at illegal immigrants, they don't deserve protections the way that naturalized citizens do, as far as I'm concerned. I know a lot of people might disagree with that. But yeah, great, track those people down.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say real quick, this is kind of related, kind of unrelated, but that video that came out this week about that woman at UC Santa Barbara, I believe it was.
Yes.
Who stole that guy's MAGA hat, and she was walking around. Now, I've watched the video several times. It's sickening to watch that. But they found her on Facebook, and they were looking back through her posts and stuff, and a lot of them were posts talking about I'm going to go to this Black Lives Matter rally or just all this different type of stuff. But she admitted that her mother was an illegal immigrant who was trying not to get deported. Okay, so if you're tracking social media data, you're going to figure out stuff like that. People who spilled the beans accidentally say, oh, someone's mother is a illegal immigrant. and people have already called ICE and reported her mother to the government to try to get deported. So, like, because that video went viral on social media, people were able to figure out who someone was and using their own social media profiles, possibly get rid of someone who's not supposed to be in this country to begin with.
And that's what the DHS is going to do in general now. So we're going to find people that we didn't see before. Mm-hmm. Good stuff. Let's jump down in immigration, down to the last thing with ICE, and then just move on.
Okay, so skip this one right here?
Yeah.
All right.
That's what I'm thinking.
Okay, so the next thing we have up here is ICE has just concluded a new operation they have entitled Operation Safe City, where in 2 days across the country, they went over and arrested over 450 people as part of this program. They arrested 498 from 42 countries for federal immigration violations in multiple cities across the U.S. during the operation that ended on Wednesday. And the operation targeted individuals who have violated the U.S. immigration laws, prioritizing aliens with criminal convictions, pending criminal charges, known gang members and affiliates, immigration fugitives, and those who re-entered the U.S. after deportation. Individuals with an active DACA, however, were not targeted for arrest. So, as it kind of goes around and what we've seen is it looks like the Trump administration, at least for right now, is prioritizing the deportation of, like, criminals, and obviously, they're all criminals because they're here legally, but like people who have criminal records or have been arrested, people who actually have documented done bad things in this country that they should not be doing.
Yes.
That's perfectly fine with me as long as they don't skip and stop doing the other things. But I understand you want to prioritize those people first. But they gave a list of the cities and the numbers. I'm not going to read them all off. But they said, like, Baltimore, they got 28 people. Philadelphia, 107. New York, 45. Washington, D.C., 14. Santa Clara County, California, 27. Los Angeles, 101. Denver, 63. Cook County, Illinois, where Chicago is, 30. So
all sanctuary cities.
The country. Yep,
all sanctuary cities. We are coming for you. And you know what? They feel this in their communities. They feel the presence of ICE coming through. And they see the results. And they get scared. And it makes them want to go home. And sometimes they do. So this is good.
And not only that, but as we said, they're prioritizing the deportation of people who have, like, who are criminals. Like, they kind of have a list of some of them here. One of the people who was arrested in Boston was convicted of indecent assault and battery on a person over the age of 14, had to register as a sex offender. Okay? So we just got rid of a sex offender. That's great.
Good stuff.
In Baltimore, there was a citizen of El Salvador who entered the U.S. on an illegal and fraudulent passport. Okay? As we said, these are people from unknown places here for unknown reasons. I know you like to use that line a lot.
Yeah.
This guy used a fraudulent passport. So we don't even know who the hell he was when he was coming in here. And he was able to get away with it. They were talking about how one of the guys who arrested in New York, he was charged with sexual abuse of a minor. And he was then convicted of sexual abuse for a minor. So we're talking about child rapists here.
Yeah.
Okay, these are people who you do not want in your society. It's bad enough that there are, when I say the word Native Americans, you know what I mean. That there are Native Americans in this country who have those problems, that are sex offenders, that are drug dealers.
We don't want the problems of other countries.
Here anyways, but why add to the problem? Why add more people who are doing that? So I'm glad that, if you want to prioritize and get rid of these people first, go right ahead, because every single one of those communities is going to benefit from not having those people there anymore.
Yeah. I can't say it any better.
Yeah.
I think with that said, let's move on to the 2018 elections stuff that we have this week. And we have big stuff.
Only a couple things, but they are big things.
Big
precisely.
stuff.
So, let's get right to it. So the first thing we have is there was finally the Alabama Senate runoff election for the Republicans, and Roy Moore defeated Luther Strange, as we said. He defeated him on a 55 to 45% margin. And it was actually, that's kind of rounded, so it was actually like 9% rather than 10%. But he still beat him by 9%, which is about what the polls were showing. Anywhere between about 8 and 12 is what they were looking at. And so, I know we have a lot to talk about this, so I know you want to bring something up right now, right? That you're planning to, so I'll let you say the first word here.
Well, I'm pretty excited with how this went, obviously. This is the result that we're predicting, but this is huge precedent. So you look at the numbers that the establishment threw in on Luther Strange, McConnell's guy. He has the same pacts as McConnell. Trump, in your rally speeches, saying that he's not part of them, you're wrong and you're lying to people, because he was.
People saw through that lie, too.
Yeah. McConnell received anywhere between $15 and $30 million of funding. Roy Moore ran with around $1.
Yeah.
We saw a $1 million campaign take a Senate seat from the establishment Republicans, and we did it at the price of between $15 and $30 million. They are afraid. They see what this means.
They see the writing on the wall.
They see what this means, and this ties into the next story that we have.
Yeah. Senator Bob Corker of Tennessee, who was definitely not on the MAGA side of the Republican Party, announced that he will be retiring at the end of next year. He will not be seeking re-election.
And he said that a day after
the very next day.
after the results of the Luther Strange thing, because he can't fundraise enough money.
Mm-mm. And as we said, 57% of Republicans see themselves as Trump supporters first and Republican Party people second. Okay? And that's all across the country. We've been talking about this for months now. For months. And this election, almost you could say, is the final nail in the coffin. Or even if you don't want to go so far as say that, as the snowball's rolling, it just hit another piece of...
We're opening the floodgates with this result. Because all of the political establishment saw what happened. Yep. And they are super afraid.
And when...
Bannon has promised, because Bannon was the mastermind of the Roy Moore thing right here. Yeah. He threw money behind him. He's helping him with news with Breitbart. He went out there and gave rallies with him, which if you haven't seen the rally with Phil Robertson, Nigel Farage, Steve Bannon for Roy Moore, great stuff. Bannon's quotes are amazing. I wish I could have the time to go over, but I don't. Steve Bannon has said, if you receive any of McConnell's money, we're coming after you. Luther Strange got McConnell's money. He got a lot of it, and it didn't help.
Not at all.
So now you got these guys like Jeff Flake. They're not even going to try and help him out.
Nope.
You got guys like Dean Heller. They're not going to try. You got guys like Bob Corker. They're not even going to try and run anymore because they know they can't raise enough money to stop the right-wing populism in this country at the moment.
And you know what? That's super optimistic for the future, as we've been saying. Because the primaries, a lot of these races,
it's like
the general election doesn't matter. Because a lot of them are super, super Republican or super, super Democrat. So the primary is the real election there.
Roy Moore is very, very likely going to get the seat.
Yeah, and we looked at the polling data. Even though it looks like it's closer in the polling data, he's still probably going to win by about 15 points.
Yeah.
It would be my estimate, 12 to 15.
What's the guy, the Democrat he's running up against?
I should have written down. It was like Leroy Jenkins or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll look it up here in a second.
You can look it up. But, this is stuff that we're going to see across the country. And this is the perfect time to do it. We need to throw our money behind primarying guys because the Democrats don't have money to face our guys in the midterms. And the Republicans are going to have to put some money on our guys if we can primary them in.
Yeah.
This is the perfect time to get some power for Trump to actually start passing some legislation.
Precisely. The Democrat running against Roy Moore is Doug Jones.
Yes, I knew it was Jones.
Yeah, he's a U.S. attorney for the Northern District of Alabama up there. So, he's going to lose. It's Alabama.
I give it 8 to 10, 9 to 10. Roy Moore is going to win.
And we've noticed that in all these special elections, they've been closer than normal, and that's because everyone's focusing on it and everyone's throwing their money in. Trump was saying that Luther Strange's poll numbers went up after his endorsement, and that is true. They did go up. They did go up. And so, even with that, the right-wing populist candidate still won. Okay? And the Democrats, it doesn't matter if they blow another $30 million like they did in the Georgia special election, between John Ossoff and Karen Handel. You're not going to be able to outspend Republicans 17 to 1 and still lose. It's not economically feasible. Look at what we've been talking about for the Republican Party and the Democratic Party for fundraising. The Republican Party has $50 million cash on hand, $0 in debt. The Democratic Party only has about $8 million cash on hand and about $3.5 million in debt. They got nothing. They can't continue to fundraise and spend all this money on losing races that they know they're going to lose.
And to continue in the narrative that we've been presenting as people that have looked at Democrat primaries as well, there is over 200 currently announced. There's going to be more people running in Democrat primaries. This is unheard of. The most you usually see is, 55, 60, not 200. Because people are pissed with their Democrat officials as well. So if the establishment on the Democrat side of things wants to protect any of their guys, that's money they can't spend in the midterms.
Right. They can't spend it in the general, that is.
Yeah. And in the general, they have a lot of Senate seats to protect. A lot.
And House seats, too.
They have a lot of House seats as well. And, they need to get the House back if they want any chance of doing anything. And even if they got every single district that Hillary won and Trump won by at least 5%, that wouldn't be enough House districts to take back the House.
Yeah.
And the Senate's where their biggest problems are. I don't see anywhere where they gain in the Senate. It's almost guaranteed we're getting 2 or 3 seats in the Senate.
3 or 4, really.
Yeah, at this point, things are really looking up.
Yeah.
And if we can primary out the Republicans that are going to face it, we can get some 3 or 4 pro-Trump Republican senators, and that's going to be a huge difference.
And a lot of people have been criticizing Trump for endorsing Luther Strange over Roy Moore. I criticize him too, and he even realized that was a bad idea.
Mid-rally,
he was in the middle of the rally and said, I think I might have made a mistake about this. And he was right. And, obviously he's going to learn from his mistakes. And I kind of understand how it does look bad for him if, let's say, he endorses someone in the Republican primary who's running against an incumbent, and the incumbent wins, okay? That person's not going to be happy with Trump, and they're probably going to be more anti-Trump than they probably already were if he was endorsing their opponent in their primary. So what Trump really has to do here, and this is something I've suggested too, is, find the Republicans in Congress who hate you, okay? Endorse the people running against them. Because it's not going to matter if that person wins or not, because that Republican incumbent is still going to hate you. And in any, Senate, or not Senate race, in any, congressional race across the country, if there is a pro-Trump candidate, it doesn't matter if they've only got 10% support in their district. Go there and hold a rally for them.
Yeah.
Okay? Every single Republican that is running against Democrats in the states that Trump won, for the Senate seats,
if Trump
you
goes
need to
there,
hold a
he's
rally
win it for him.
At least 1 or 2 rallies for every single one of those people.
He said he's going to rally for Roy Moore.
Yeah, exactly. So it's going to be great to see him do that. And I think, and this is my prediction, that you see that there is this wave of right-wing populism in the Republican Party, and they're going to push out several. I wouldn't be surprised if they push out dozens of people in the primary season in districts that are safe Republican districts, and then go on to win. And that's for both the House and for some of those Senate seats that we were talking about as well. Especially look at Bob Corker. I mean, Tennessee's a solid red state. Whoever wins the Republican nomination, that is going to go on. So you're going to have at least one person running who's explicitly pro-Trump, pro-MAGA.
Yeah.
And you're going to have at least one person who's just establishment all the way. I can tell you who's going to do better among polling in that district, or in their state.
It's the pro-Trump guy.
Exactly. And especially in states like that in the South, where the percentage of pro-Trump versus GOP people is a lot higher than that 57% we were talking about. It's probably 7 and 10 in those. I wouldn't be surprised. So that alone, we could be getting a pro-Trump seat for Tennessee.
Yes.
Okay.
Now,
yeah, go ahead.
I want to touch on 2 things. So I want to give some good news on Bob Corker leaving. If you don't know the man Bob Corker. Conservative Review, I mentioned they give their Liberty scores. Bob Corker has a 47% rating out of 100%.
Right.
So this guy is a piece of crap. He's not voting in any way that any sort of right-winger wants him to be voting. So all of a sudden, we can replace that with anyone that could do better. But another thing, with the precedent of the Bob Corker retirement, is we've also seen talks of Orrin Hatch retiring soon as
Right.
well.
And he's the senator from Utah.
The senator from Utah, he's 83 years old. And if he knows he has an extremely difficult primary ahead of him, he might not do this.
He might not.
He might not do this.
And this is stuff that we've predicted, too. We predicted that there might be a wave of establishment GOP retiring because of this, once they see the writing on the wall. Now, there was an article we were going to mention it a couple of weeks ago, but we decided not to. But now's a good time, since you mentioned Orrin Hatch, that Mitt Romney has talked about he's thinking about running in that Senate seat if Orrin Hatch does retire.
And he will get that seat.
Yeah, he would get that seat if he gets the nomination.
Yes.
Because whoever gets the Republican's going to win there.
And Orrin Hatch has said that he'd be willing to hand it over to Mitt Romney.
Yeah.
Now, we are not fans of the Mitt Romneys.
No, not at all. Romney would be an anti-Trump senator. But here's the thing about that, though, is there still are a lot of pro-Trump people out in Utah. And even though you had in the election when you had, what's the name, the Krispy Kreme dude? No, not Krispy Kreme dude. The one Mormon guy that was running out there, I don't even want to remember his name anymore, but he got like 25% of the vote or something like that.
The Constitutionalist Party,
No,
Evan
not
McMullen?
Yeah, Evan McMullen. He wasn't Constitution Party, but yeah, Evan McMullen out there when he was running. So what that really showed was that was just a bunch of like Mormons who didn't like Trump.
Yeah.
Okay, if he did so well, you know, those people normally vote Republican. That's why if you look at when people show maps of like margin of error in the 2016 election, I'm sorry, not margin of error, margin of victory per county and per state, it appears that Utah went super blue. But in reality, Hillary Clinton got like 26% of the vote. Obama got like 25% of the vote in 2012. So the percentage of Democrats is still the same, but just there was much less people voting for Trump because they were voting for Evan McMullen instead.
Yeah.
And so those people normally vote Republican. So I can understand how in a state like Utah, having a Mormon candidate be the Mormon Republican candidate is going to get a lot of their voters to band together. But that being said, the Trump voters still outnumbered that. And a lot of them are pissed at Romney as well because they see him as an establishment shill Republican.
Because he
and
is.
So his Mormon beliefs might take him a little bit in Utah.
And he's got a lot of money.
Yeah,
a
and
lot
his
of
money. But as we've said, if you can have the pro-MAGA people get out, I don't see what's stopping this wave once it gets going. And
Because money is a lot less significant for these insurgent candidates.
If you get Trump out there and endorse the pro-MAGA candidate in the primary, if you get Steve Bannon out there holding rallies and talking to people and favoring them, and you can get some more people like that, like, you know, I personally don't like Sarah Palin that much myself. A lot of people do. She was out there campaigning for Roy Moore as well.
Yes.
And that goes a long way to, like, you know, your basic Republican base.
It gets people to your rallies
Yeah.
having these names.
And gets them excited, and they're more likely to vote for that person anyway. So that's what needs to be done here over the next 6 to 8 months. We have a calendar on the database that we're making showing all the different primaries and whatnot. It goes from, like, March to August.
Yeah.
Okay? Some of those places, their primary election is election day. And their actual election is a runoff date. Now, that's not for everywhere. It's for, like, a couple of, like, smaller seats. But still, okay? So this is something that's going to last all summer. I mean,
Yeah.
think about this. Think about this. The entire time that we've been doing this show was March of this year. That's when the primaries start, is March of next year. And the election is in November. Okay? It's October right now. So everything that we have done from this show up until this point is still not the entire time that we are going to be covering primaries for next year.
Which is why we're going to be a hella in depth,
Yeah.
and you want to stay tuned. But Roy Moore is the model at this point.
Yes.
He's the model campaign on how you do this. They did everything right the way he was. Now, Roy Moore wasn't an unknown quantity to the voters in Alabama. That
He's on the
is the
Supreme
one
Court.
problem that we might face, is we need to get people that have name brand recognition in their own areas. But still, this is going to be something that we're going to be seeing, hopefully, many times over. Something similar to the insurgency that Roy Moore had on Luther Strange. They threw a lot of money. The establishment wanted that seat real bad, and we took it away from them.
And it just sends the message. You either get on board with Trump's agenda, or we are going to replace you. And it doesn't matter how much money you spend. You're not going to win that. But here's the thing. I understand realism. We're not going to win them all.
No.
There are going to be some people where it's going to appear that the pro-Trump person is winning, and then they lose. And I understand that. And that is politics. That's going to happen. But that being said, the polling is on our side. The data is on our side. The movement is on our side. This is happening, and there's nothing anyone's going to be able to do to stop it. Especially as Congress becomes more and more anti-Trump and can't get anything done, that's going to fuel the flames even more for the pro-Trump people to run against the establishment Republicans in their districts or their states. And that goes a long way.
Yeah.
Because if anything, even if they lose, I can guarantee you they're not going to lose by huge margins. 5-10-point losses, that's like half of the voter base, okay, is like the pro-Trump people. And so like we said, 57% of Republicans, granted that's not going to be evenly placed around there, but if that was evenly placed across every single district, you could upset every single establishment Republican in D.C. theoretically.
Yeah.
Granted, they got the money, but the money's not going to matter when the voters are getting out there and saying this person is against Trump's agenda. They're an establishment Republican. They've been here forever. I'm pro-Trump. I'm going to get this stuff done. I'm going to vote for border wall funding. I'm going to vote for tax reform if it hasn't already gotten done. I'm going to continue to vote on the side of repealing Obamacare, fixing the healthcare system. And you will win in the primaries because the American people in every district, especially mainstream Republicans, are so pissed at the Republican Party right now that they are willing to vote for an unknown candidate as long as they promise to do those things. So you get someone in there who's unknown, even if as long as they are serious and they are genuine. And you get the support of Steve Bannon or Sarah Palin or Ben Carson or any one of those other people that endorsed Roy Moore that are now nationally known people in the Republican Party, you get those people's names trending on Twitter, you get an email campaign, Facebook campaigns, all this stuff out there, you're going to do so well.
Yeah.
And the Democratic Party, as we've said before, is screwed.
They're going to become even more irrelevant. And think about this, Bobby, just these two things. Roy Moore is replacing Luther Strange in the Senate. Lock. It's going to happen. Kelly Ward is going to replace Jeff Flake in the Senate.
Yes.
That is a lock. That will happen.
At least in primary.
Yes. And she will likely win the general as well. We only lost healthcare by one vote.
Mm-hmm.
These two guys, or, well, I guess guy and woman, are going to support the president.
Yeah.
We are going to get legislation on our side.
And like Roy Moore, even though Trump didn't endorse him, the tone that he was setting was pretty much, I owe this to Donald Trump. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for him.
Yes.
And same thing goes with Kelly Ward. Same thing's going to go with Danny Tarkanian out in Nevada against Dean Heller. Same thing is going to go for every other candidate. The only reason a right-wing populist is going to beat an establishment person is because of Donald Trump and the MAGA movement.
Imagine this. Say we get Ward, we get Moore, we get Tarkanian, we get Kid Rock. We could get ourselves in a position
Yes.
to take the 60-vote Senate majority that we need to just pass anything without any sort of nuclear option or anything. We could do that very soon.
And imagine if someone like Joe Manchin does switch to the Republican Party.
Which, I mean, he should.
He should. He practically is right now.
He practically is.
So the last thing I was going to mention is there's even one factor that we haven't even brought up yet. And that is the voter fraud investigation that's currently going on. We talked in detail about the whole situation out in New Hampshire, about those 5,500 fraudulent votes that are essentially, they are fraudulent votes. That's another Senate seat that we should have had because that person only lost by 1,200 votes. And you guarantee you that more than 1,200 of those fraudulent votes were going for Hillary. Trump should have won New Hampshire. He should have won it. And as this continues to go, and they release that data next summer, next June or whatever, when that data gets out, you might have time, especially if, especially if some of those people haven't had their primaries yet, you can get done at least some forms of voter ID, which, I mean, that's going to help us in the general more so than the primaries.
Voter ID or purging registrations.
Or both.
Or both.
And here's the thing. Every single person who is, the pro-Trump candidate, I guess I could use, they're going to be on board with voter ID.
Yes.
If that hits the Senate floor, if that hits the House floor, they're voting for it. You can guarantee that. That's no debate. They're going to do that. So the more that this data comes out and that gets released, it just, again, as I said,
better our chances look for the midterms.
Yeah. And even if you can't get voter ID done before the midterms, That's going to be something they're going to do after the midterms.
And for 2020, we need that.
Yeah. I mean, as I said, if you look at the in California, or I'm sorry, in Cook County, Illinois, we've talked about this in the show. There was like 112% turnout. Now, that is by number of votes that were cast divided by voting eligible population, or people that are registered to vote. So not only would that mean that they would have had 100% voter turnout plus an extra like 12% or so fraudulent votes, okay? Voter turnout across the country for this election was only about 56%, 57%, somewhere in there to about 60%. Granted, that's not the same all across the board, but theoretically say it is. Okay, that means like something like a third to half of the votes in Cook County are fraudulent, okay? And we said that there are like 12 states where there are more people registered to vote than there are living voting age people in those states right now. And when you look at California, there were, I think it was 11 or 12 counties, I think it was 11 counties, where there were more votes cast in those counties in 2016 than there were people that are eligible to vote in those counties of the voting age population. Same thing goes to Cook County. You guarantee that they did not have 100% voter turnout, plus an extra number of fraudulent votes, and no one's doing shit to investigate, or I mean, they are investigating that, but they're not doing a thing to try to like go back and resolve those votes.
No.
Especially in California. I wouldn't be surprised if, Hillary Clinton's 3 million votes that she won by, if Trump did win the popular vote. I would not be surprised if when you really got down to it, investigated every single illegal fraudulent vote that occurred in this country, that was the case.
And here's the thing. There's people who hold office currently in our Congress who are a Democrat that have their seat because of voter fraud that exists. We take that away from them, we can get that back. And even if that's 1 or 2 seats in the House, it all matters, because it's going to be close in the House. But
not only does it matter just in that, it also matters who.
yeah,
Because I'm sure a lot of those people are people who we don't want there.
no, not at all.
So we've been talking about elections for a while now. Should we just go ahead and move on to the
Let's move
the
on
other
to
news
bottom
in
of
the
the
stack?
stack. Let's try to like jump around a bit.
Yeah,
I'm gonna
so
be quick.
let's just go ahead and say this first story here. Anthony Weiner has been sentenced to 21 months in prison. We all remember Anthony Weiner because he got in trouble for taking pictures of his wiener and sending them to teens, underage girls.
Former husband of Huma Abedin?
Yeah, I think they're still married, actually.
They're still married.
I know. Yeah, anyways.
Wow, she's sticking by him.
Yeah, so I'm glad that's happened. That's one less perverted pedophile off these streets.
Corrupt pervert as well.
Mm-hmm. I think 21 months is
very short,
very
though.
generous, but yeah. Next story that we're moving on to. This one I do kind of want to go into some detail.
Okay.
So there was a survey that was done by the Annenberg Public Policy Center, the APPC. They surveyed American adults about their what they know about like U.S. government and history. This is some crazy statistics. Now, you haven't read these yet.
No, I
And
haven't.
I want to get your reaction as I said this, okay?
Okay, yeah.
37% of Americans can't even name a single right endowed by the First Amendment.
Huh.
Over 1/3 of Americans cannot name a single First Amendment right. Now, 48% of Americans were able to identify freedom of speech as being a right. But freedom of religion, only 15% could name that as a First Amendment right.
Only 15%.
Only 15%. Freedom of the press, only 14%. Right to peaceful assembly, only 10%. And right to petition the government, only 3% of Americans could identify that as a First Amendment right. I can name all of those.
Yeah.
And you can name all of those.
Yeah.
We're already in the 3% of Americans that actually know what the hell the Constitution says.
That's sad. That's
That's
really
very
bad
sad.
numbers. Schooling is not doing any of the Constitution justice.
Only 26% of Americans, barely 1 in 4, can name all 3 branches of the government. Executive, legislative, judicial.
Which is crazy, because that's the functions of government. Like,
Yeah.
that's how the stuff works.
Yeah, they also broke it down by ideological lines.
Yeah.
Conservatives were more likely to be able to name all 3 branches than liberals or moderates. The overall proportion of the public that can name all 3 has fallen by 12% since 2011.
Oh man, that's a big drop
This
off.
It's not like this is something that's been perpetuating. This is something that's going fast. So, I mean, I guess, yeah, conservatives are smarter than liberals. At least they know how the government functions. Here's the most embarrassing thing. A full third of Americans couldn't even name a single federal branch of the government.
A third?
Yeah. So we said that a quarter of Americans couldn't name all three, but they could name one or they could name two, but they couldn't name all three. But 1 in 3 people across the country could not name a single one of them at all. Could not name executive or legislative or judicial at all.
Man.
Yeah.
And here we are talking about elections for
These people
House
vote.
races.
And this was adults. This was of adult Americans. So I'm assuming vast majority of those people are eligible to vote.
Yes.
Okay? You've got only a third of all American voters, essentially, that's what you're saying, can't even name a single branch of the federal government.
Which is crazy. I bet a lot of them voted against Donald Trump.
Oh,
as well.
absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, you think that, you walk up to your average Trump voter, which, I'm picturing like, kind of an older person, white hair, standing there. Say, what are the 3 branches of government? They'll be
They
like,
know.
boom, 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 got
They
it.
know.
You walked up to your average college liberal. I mean, you see those videos of like Jimmy Kimmel and all
Or
those
Mark
people.
Dice.
Yeah, they walk on the street, ask people questions. Those people are retards, essentially.
Yeah.
And you always say, these people vote. And a lot of people like to think, if you're like, okay, that was just one person. No, those people are all over the place. You and I talk to those types of people on a daily basis. It's that bad.
It's so different, our mindset, where we're talking about hypothetical, like, strategy for the Senate and the House. Yeah. We know about races in places we don't live in.
Or haven't even visited.
I haven't been to Louisiana. I haven't been to Nevada. You have. But,
last time.
But these people don't even know what they're even voting to send these people to.
No.
They don't know what the Congress is. It's insane.
Or they don't know how the Congress functions or operates. You think the majority of Americans know about the 60 vote rule in the Senate?
No.
Of course not. They don't. At all. So that's some really, really bad statistics going forward here in the future. And I can guarantee you, it doesn't actually say this, but those numbers are probably a bit higher for younger adults than they are for older adults too. So that's
Very
our
likely.
generation doesn't know what they're doing.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, we vote. And how are you ever supposed to have a functioning government if your society can't even understand what they're doing? Because they're going to vote for people that are going to easily persuade them. And if they don't really know what they're voting for, which a lot of those people don't know what they're voting for, they're going to vote for whatever. I mean, look how well Bernie Sanders did in the Democrat primaries last year.
Yes, very well.
I'm assuming a lot of those people are probably in those numbers we were talking about.
Yeah. But they're enticed by the appeal of free college and free healthcare and free whatever you want. So they'll vote for that.
I'm going to say something edgy here.
Okay.
That's always been an opinion of mine.
Yeah.
And I'll probably bite me in the ass going forward if someone ever listens to this. I don't think everyone should have the right to vote.
Yeah.
I really think it should be limited to only people that are able to answer those types of questions.
Or
at least, I've had a theory. What if when everyone goes to vote, everyone's vote counts as normal? But at the end, they answer a questionnaire like those questions, like what are the 3 branches of the government? Check the box. Okay? Compare the results of who got everything right to who got everything, or at least didn't get everything right, or got some stuff wrong, or got it completely wrong. Compare who those people voted for. And then ask yourself, who should really be the winner in this race?
Yeah.
That's what I have to say.
Or, I've always thought about this as far as, maybe you should only get to vote if you actually pay something into the system.
Yeah.
Net to what you receive. Because why should someone that receives benefits and doesn't pay into the system have a say in politics where they can vote for someone that's going to raise taxes on someone else? Doesn't make sense.
When a
But
majority...
that's how, that's how it currently stands in our democracy.
Yeah,
so.
I know. Mitt Romney, I know we were bagging on him beforehand, but in 2012, when he was running for president, he made a statement, 47% of Americans don't pay federal income taxes.
But it's true.
That is absolutely a true statement. When those people reach the majority and they're able to vote in people who want to raise taxes, that is essentially taxation without representation.
Yeah.
Even though you're being represented, you're being, isn't that the definition
That's
of
why
tyranny?
Puerto Rico doesn't get a vote, because
Yeah.
they don't pay income tax.
That is the definition of tyranny at that point. When
Yeah.
when the majority is enforcing negative stuff on the minority in order to benefit the majority.
But, you bring it back to Bernie Sanders. They use the boogeyman of the 1% who pays the majority of the taxes in this country to say that they're taking something from you, the member of the 47% who doesn't pay any income tax.
Yeah.
And it works very well. And that's why a third of people of our generation, the millennial generation, think socialism is a good idea. We're getting so stupid. It's insane.
I would wonder what we would, if you and me could pull people on campus, walk around with a microphone and camera someday, ask people those same questions, name all three branches of government, name, or anything like that we went over. Just see what and then ask them, who'd you vote for last year? Primary and general election. Poll that. Poll a couple hundred people so you have a good big data source.
We'll get some fun and telling results.
Yeah.
I'll say that.
So,
let's move on, though. So, I guess we could briefly touch on this thing that happened last Sunday.
Yes.
And that was the mass shooting that happened at Burnett Chapel Church of Christ in Antioch, Tennessee.
Yeah, that's where the shooter went in. He shot 6 people, killed one of them, and the guy who was, I guess, an usher at the church, he fought with the guy, went out to his car, and got his gun, and was able to subdue the shooter. I guess it turns out that guy was a Sudanese immigrant.
Yes.
And Sudan, that's on the travel ban. So theoretically, going forward, a guy like him not going to be able to make it back in. If we had the travel ban back then, he wouldn't be here. 6 people wouldn't be shot, and 1 woman wouldn't be dead.
Yeah, that's why immigration is very important. They always say with, the people that want to ban guns, they say, if we pass this law, if we save 1 life, it was worth it. Well, if we pass, one more strict immigration law, we could have saved that life. Why is that now worth in the equivalence? But, yes, the guy was a Sudanese immigrant, Emmanuel Kadega Sampson. His victim was Melanie Smith, and the guy who saved the day was Caleb Engel. So this guy was a particular piece of work because we haven't talked really about football so much on this show, but that has been a big deal lately. And, you look at that guy's Facebook page, guess who was his cover photo?
I don't know. Who?
Colin Kaepernick kneeling.
Of course it was.
Yeah, so this was one of those radicalized black nationalist types. And, he explicitly said this is revenge for Dylan Roof. It's so similar to Dylan Roof. He just killed less people. He wasn't, I guess, as good with a gun. But that's why...
He also accidentally shot himself in the process.
Yeah.
That's the reason why the usher was able to go to his car, get his gun, and hold him over.
Yeah, but you think this would have, big media news, a church shooting. Nothing,
by the media.
Nothing at all. No one's talked about this.
Yeah, so...
I don't even think it was Tucker Carlson even talked about this, really.
He did. Tucker Carlson talked about it.
He talked about this.
For Monday or Tuesday.
But barely anyone. They have buried this story very well because the optics is not good for the narrative that the left wants to push.
No, of course not.
So that has been very telling. But yeah, it's really bad that what happened there, and
I hope the 6 people that were shot have a speedy recovery.
Yeah.
The next story, let's just talk about this very, very briefly. So the Opioid Commission has unveiled new partnerships with drug suppliers to limit the epidemic that's currently going on. Now, remember when we did our midweek episode on the opioid epidemic a couple of weeks ago?
Very well received. A lot of downloads for that one.
Yeah. So Trump currently has an ongoing commission on combating drug addiction and the opioid crisis, and they've now set new pharmaceutical standards in the industry to pretty much limit the type of opioid, or limit the amount of opioids that people are able to receive in prescriptions, and also cut in half the time needed to make available prescriptions that are non-addictive as well. So pretty much what this is doing is it's trying to limit the supply of opioids that are addictive to people, while at the same time getting non-addictive products out to people faster so they don't have to use opioids that can be addictive as a substitution. That's something that's now being put into place as part of President Trump's effort to combat the opioid epidemic that has been ravaging this country over the last several years.
Yeah. So some good stuff we're seeing on that front. Let's go into this study that we have that's very staggering that I wanted to get into. And this is out of the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. They have a new report that says currently there is an estimated 110 million Americans now infected with an STD. STD rates have risen dramatically in this country over a very short period of time.
Almost 5% in 2015 to 2016 alone.
Yes. Amongst chlamydia, which is the most common STD, the number of cases rose 4.7% between 2015 and 2016. The areas of people most affected by this new rise is we've seen amongst adolescents and young adult women for chlamydia. One survey found that 9.2% of girls aged 15 to 19 were infected, and as were 8% of women aged 20 to 24. So a very, very big number of people. Yeah. We also have very similar numbers for gonorrhea. Gonorrhea amongst men has increased by 22.2% from 2015 to 2016, and amongst women 13.8%. Almost 92% of the cases for people involved in that were between the ages of 15 and 44 years old. And lastly, syphilis has also been up. And this has increased amongst people in their 20s. The number of babies infected with syphilis increased to 628 cases in 2016, up from 492 in 2015.
Not good.
Yeah, not good stuff.
STD rates are going up. A lot of unprotected sex that is going on in this country, as well as just a culture that embraces sex, especially embraces pornography, gets that on people's minds. It's what they want to do, and they're going out and they're making mistakes, and now they're suffering because of that. So that's just kind of an ongoing trend of, the devolution of society as it continues to go on. This is a natural side effect that occurs.
Yeah, 110 million Americans is crazy. I mean, how many of the 325 people do we have are,
325 million?
Yeah, 325 million citizens. If you just take people, age 15 and up or say, that can't be more than what, like 250 or so, 275
million, about, yeah.
That'd be about that. That's about a third, between a third and half.
Yeah.
Of adults.
And that's probably higher for lower generations like ours as well.
Yeah.
Who embrace, hookup type culture, where unprotected sex happens a lot nowadays. People have sex with 5, 6 different people, So.
These numbers are insane.
And they're only going to get worse. And that's a societal problem that needs to change. That's not something that just giving people medicine is going to stop.
Yeah.
So that's only going to get worse going forward.
Do you want to get into the next story, or should we move on to some other stuff?
Let's go ahead and cut these two, and then we'll finally end with NFL here for this section here.
Yeah.
So, we're going to talk about the NFL.
We are talking about the NFL for the first time in, I think, forever.
Yes.
But now the NFL is relevant to politics ever since the Luther Strange, incident with Donald Trump. And this is actually, the biggest thing happening right now. We held off from talking about it last week.
Because I'm going to do a midweek episode called Sports in the Trump Era.
Which we'll go extremely thorough on this.
It's going to be an hour or 2 hours of just talking about everything in the sports world since Trump started running in the election, how sports gets political and all that different sort of stuff. But last week,
some news to report on.
Yes.
Well, do you want to get into the NFL stuff?
Yeah, let's go ahead and talk about NFL, and then we'll get to this thing right here.
Yeah. So we saw some different things happen this last week. One, we saw more people kneel.
Right.
We saw A lot of people kneel. Last week was the Steelers game where Villanueva came out.
Yeah, Alejandro Villanueva, the Steelers, was the only player to come out. The rest of the team stayed in the tunnel. And quarterback Ben Roethlisberger of the Pittsburgh Steelers, he even later said he regretted doing that. After he saw his loyal fans, burning his jerseys, he realized, oh crap. He had a Trump Luther Strange moment, realized, I've made a mistake. And so far, we're recording it this Sunday. They said that there have been a couple of people still kneeling this Sunday, but definitely not at the rate that it was last week.
Last week was way too much.
Because NFL ratings for last week to the week before last week was down 8%.
Ticket sales were down 12%.
Yeah, ticket sales are down 12%. The NFL is expected to lose $200 million in revenue this year. This is hitting them hard, okay? Alejandro Villanueva's jersey, the very next day, become the highest, most popular jersey on NFLshop.com, as well as a couple of other third-party websites that sell NFL jerseys. Okay, you know why? Because people supported what he did. He was saying the rest of my team wants to not stand for the the national anthem, wants to not come out here, wants to not show respect. I'm still going to do it myself, and I know we're going to talk a lot about this more, so I know you want to make a point.
Yeah, but one thing that we've also seen is we've seen people calling for refunds for the NFL ticket.
Yes.
And that is... They've never done that before.
I believe it is DirecTV or one of the other companies.
It's either DirecTV or Dish. My dad used to buy the ticket.
I want to say it's DirecTV. It might be Dish. It's one of those two.
Yeah.
They normally do not allow for refunds for their NFL packages.
Those are $280 for the season.
They are saying that if people cite national anthem protests as their reason for wanting to cancel their subscription in the middle of the season, they are honoring that and letting them cancel their subscription.
So if you're pissed about this and you bought that, go try and get your money back now.
Yeah, they'll let you do it.
Don't wait until they kind of get this more under wraps. Do it now.
Yeah, and so this has been a huge problem. And obviously it's broken down along racial lines. I think that's pretty clear for the most part. You can even look at just people's responses on social media to it.
The articles out of the Huffington Post have been very fun.
Yeah, what was the one?
They had that one that was like, white players still standing for the anthem or standing for white supremacy.
Yeah, stuff like that.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
And but the response from just the people, I think it's safe to just point out the fact. NFL fans and viewers are disproportionately white.
Yeah,
they're white.
It's something like 75%.
They are white working class, okay? If you look at how white working class people voted in the election, it was like 75% went to Trump.
Yeah.
Those are your core NFL fans. That's where these protests are coming from. So when Trump is out there saying something that those people have already thought in the back of their heads, thinking this stuff's disrespectful, now my president is calling them out for it. I'm going to support him in also calling these people out for it. That's why you see ratings down. That's why you see ticket sales down. The NFL knows this is a huge, huge problem.
And they don't know how to stop it.
No, and the only way for them to stop it is to tell their players, you need to stand for the anthem. If not, we'll suspend you for a game. We'll kick you out for the rest of the season. We'll finish off your contract, and we're not going to re-sign you. Okay? That's the only way that's going to be able to solve this problem. Now, we're going to go into a lot more detail on my Sports in the Trump era podcast that I'm going to do here. But the point still stands. NFL fans absolutely hate what is going on. There was a poll that was released, I think it was by Pew Research or one of those types of companies, where it said that I think it was 69% of Americans or 69% of NFL fans view kneeling for the national anthem as disrespectful to the country.
Yeah.
69%. So all the uproar you are hearing on social media, people in support of those people, is a very, very, very small minority that is very vocal.
Similar to what we've seen with Confederate monuments, 3 in 4 people, polling-wise, support monuments staying up.
Yeah.
It's only a very small vocal minority that is saying they want statues come down. It's the same people for football. The thing is, these people watch football a lot less.
Exactly. And I know a lot of people on the right tend not to like sports very much. I myself consider myself a huge sports fan.
I'm trying to it's kind of funny. I'm experimenting watching football again for the first time in years now on Sundays. So I'm like kind of getting into it, but like, yeah, I understand like why you'd be against football.
Yeah, but even that being said, football is a very big part of American culture. And when people who are football fans see their players disrespecting the country, the way that they view it as disrespectful, whether or not it is disrespectful is an entirely different argument.
Whether that's their intention or not.
Yeah, whether that's in their intention, that's how people see it. And that is what's driving the money here going forward. So the NFL knows this is a problem. The NBA, Commissioner Adam Silver of the NBA, even reiterated that under current NBA rules, players have to stand for the national anthem. And they got to stand in line next to each other the way they do it. That's always been the rule, at least for a very, very long time for the NBA. And he specifically sent out a memo reminding people, this is our rule, do not violate it for this upcoming season that's going to start here at like around the end of this month.
Because he doesn't want to lose money either.
No.
He's beholden to stockholders just as much as people in the NFL are.
Right.
And the entire sports industry in general.
And the entire sports industry is seeing this as a problem as well. Lesser so in baseball, because, I mean, I'll just admit it, this is the truth. Most baseball players are Hispanic, whereas most NFL players are black.
Yeah.
And it is the majority black players are the ones who are doing the kneeling, protesting against racial discrimination,
police brutality,
stuff like that. Whereas the Hispanic players, Latino players in the MLB, which make up the majority of that, don't face that sort of stuff. So only one player, as far as I know, actually has kneeled for a national anthem at a baseball game.
Yeah.
Only one player. Whereas the NFL is something like every single team had people protesting. Some teams had everybody protesting. Now, when it comes down to it, some players this week were saying that they were still going to lock arms, but they're still going to have their hand over their heart.
Because we watched Monday Night Football. Yeah. What was it, Cowboys?
It was the Cowboys versus whoever they were playing.
I forget.
Arizona. Yeah, Arizona.
Cardinals. They did their little stunt because viewership was incredibly down for the Sunday games, but it actually was up for the Monday game because everyone wanted to know what they were going to do.
What the Cowboys are going to do.
So they did their little stunt where they all interlocked arms and kneeled prior.
But then
when they didn't do it during the national anthem. But the fans still booed the hell out of them when they kneeled.
Even in Massachusetts for the New England Patriots, which is one of the most liberal states in the country.
Yeah.
Even those fans were booing their players and shouting racial epithets at them.
They don't like that shit either.
No, they're not. And these are people who are super, super liberal, who are the type you're thinking are intolerant, and love equality. Even they were saying, stop it. What you're doing is disrespectful, and I don't like what you're doing.
Yeah, and, this can only do good for Trump. Trump did not intend to do this at all.
This is not a 4D chess move. It's simply a side effect that works out.
He just said something was on his mind during the rally, and now it eclipses the Luther Strange rally, which doesn't matter at all in the history at all anymore. But the majority of people agreeing with Trump on something is good politically for Trump. It makes him come off better to people.
And as I said before, the majority of people who are NFL fans are white working class people. Those people used to vote Democrat. This election, they started to swing towards Trump.
The union people.
Yeah, the union type people. So those people, especially up in states like Pennsylvania and Michigan, all those areas in the Northeast, that flip to him, if they see these players continue to do stuff like this, that's going to make them not like them and not like what they represent, which is going to drive them more towards Trump's
Which is left-wing politics.
Yes. People watch sports because they want to get away from politics. They want to
Even leftists watch sports because they want to get away from politics.
Stephen A. Smith, who works for ESPN, a lot of people make fun of him. They don't like him. They think he's an idiot. But even he said, why can't we just get back? Why can't we let sports be sports? Why can't we get politics out of this? Okay? And so even he, who is a liberal person, ended up doing that. So, interpret that how you want, but...
So let's just get into the last story that we have before current year college craziness, which is connected to
all I never actually got to the story I wanted to mention here. So, apparently there's an all-women's lingerie football league, and they wear nothing but bikinis and then like a chest pad.
Yeah.
And they play like regular football. Every single one of them said, we are standing for the national anthem. So even the women wearing bikinis playing football are saying we're going to respect the country and continue to do what we do. Hey, I didn't even know the Lingerie Football League existed.
I knew it existed, but
I'm going to go buy myself some tickets for next season. I'll tell you that. Watching women play football and nothing but bikinis? Hell yeah.
we must
Respecting
have a
my
team in
country?
Texas. I don't know.
Yeah, we do. I mean, I don't have the full list of here, but there's got to be at least one. We should definitely look into that, and we should take all of our friends there for party.
That'd be kind of fun.
But yeah, sure.
With that said, let's go into current year college craziness.
Let's do it.
The racist, sexist, homophobic, xenophobic. You're fucking a white male!
The assumption that women are naturally better caregivers is part of patriarchy.
Die, cis, scum.
You will not divide us! You will not divide us! You will not divide us! You will not divide us!
It's time for some current year college craziness.
Current year college craziness, the segment that keeps on giving, the segment of the show where we talk about the crazy stuff that happens on college campuses, both here and abroad, but predominantly here because we are the kings of crazy stuff happening on college campuses here in the United States. And we have a doozy of stuff to go over. We've cut a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
So this is the best of the best we have for this week. And let's just get into it.
Yeah.
The first story you got.
I got this first story. So, Enzo, you remember when you were a kid when you got to play in the McDonald's ball pit?
I do.
Well, you might get the chance to do that again in college because colleges across the country are now coddling their students with ball pits to provide them some emotional support. This is according to the College Fix. They said the ball pits are going to be used as icebreakers to break down racial barriers, facilitate lessons on wellness, and as part of freshman orientations. There's a number of colleges across the country that are doing this, including places like Central Connecticut State University, St. Mary's College, Northwestern State University, University of Delaware, and Ole Miss have joined in trying to do so. So if one of those colleges is around you and you want to go there, just remember, you're going to get yourself a chance to have a ball pit in order to jump in there as emotional support, because that's definitely what our college students need, right, Enzo? Right.
More ball pits. Also more chicken nuggets.
They say that students pick up a ball with a prompt and they talk to their partner in the ball pit about their response. They say the balls are starting conversation between students and help them get to know one another on a slightly deeper level. Right. I could make a perverted joke, but I won't do it. But yeah, so they said, we write some questions on the bigger balls that try to facilitate bigger conversations, said one of the people at Ole Miss. And they said they write questions such as, what's your favorite spot on campus? And what's the best place to eat on campus? So Enzo, if you're feeling depressed and you need some emotional support, you jump in that ball pit, you grab a ball, and you go talk to the person next to you. And you ask them some basic ass questions, like, where do you want to get dinner tonight?
That definitely sounds like college to me. College in the current year.
Very, very crazy.
Yes.
Let's move on.
Let's get into the next one. And this next story is out of Albion College, which is a private liberal arts college in Michigan. And this is in regards to some viewpoints that their college Republicans have on a Google Doc preparing for a debate on white privilege and institutional racism. And these were actually viewpoints that were just directly taken from Ben Shapiro, conservative mainstream, Ben Shapiro. Not edgy at all. On Monday, though, at the college, they had 100 students and faculty protesting because of what was written on these Word documents, because it got out to the other competitors. The Black, Latino, and LGBT groups called the document racist and violent. So are you ready for the super, super racist and edgy things that were written in this Google document?
I am so ready for it.
Prepare yourself. Trigger warning. You might be triggered. You might not be. If you listen to this show, you probably won't. But let's go into it. Statistical disparity does not mean discrimination. Whoa!
Whoa!
The only color that capitalism cares about is green, not black, white, or whatever you have.
Liberals will make up their own subjective truths to their own convenience to prove you wrong. Well, that's true. Their personal truths are not the truth. There's only one truth, and bullshit. That's actually a pretty true statement, I gotta say.
Yeah.
Very, very triggering, though. Saying that liberals are lying. My God.
Yeah.
And they will lie to themselves even to misrepresent the truth. Say it isn't so. Oh, I gotta love this one here.
Do you want to get into that last point?
Is this the Take the Liberal Tears one?
Yeah.
I'll go ahead and read it.
So there was one more thing on there written that was also, I guess, super edgy.
Now,
super
this was
racist,
not
super
written by
violent.
Ben Shapiro. This is written by a student at the college. He says, "Take the liberal tears from the idiot you just destroyed in your debate. Disassemble your American-made Springfield M1911 .45 caliber handgun and apply the tears in order to clean the mechanism. Reassemble and proceed to purchase Antifa and ISIS hunting permits and max out on tags."
That was the one that rustled them the most. But the other ones that we'd mentioned also rustled them a lot. So they had 100 people go outside the student government there at the college and protest. And they sang Kumbaya.
Literally kumbaya.
But they are so threatened by these words written on a Google document and the fact that these could be used in a debate against them.
And they got so triggered that they had to go out and protest, have 100 people go out and protest.
Instead of thinking of like responses to
Yeah.
these things, knowing the inside dirt on your opponents, because I've been in college debates before, I would love to have their stuff prior. They luckily had their stuff prior, but instead of thinking of what they could say, they cried about it on campus and sang Kumbaya stuff.
How sad, how sad. But no,
we are definitely raising a generation of tough cookies at these colleges.
You know what's even better? I bet you that every single one of those people protesting was definitely able to answer those questions that we talked about earlier in the show. I bet you every single one of them can name all three branches of the government. I guarantee it.
Oof.
Fantastically.
Completely hard with the sarcasm.
Oh, yes, of course, if you couldn't already tell. So,
let's move on to the
yeah.
next one that we have here, though. And this is out of Pennsylvania State University Brandywine.
oh God, this one's fat.
Yeah. So there's this woman named Angela Putman, and she recently asserted...
Well, like Angela Pudgeman. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, Angela Putman, or Pudgeman. She recently asserted in an academic paper that the notion, if I work hard, I can be successful, is merely a product of white ideology. Angela Putman conducted a study to critique and examine ideologies within college students' discourse that are fundamental to whiteness. Her resulting conclusion, published on Thursday, was that meritocracy, or the belief that people should rise based on the fruits of their labors, is a white ideology. In her mind, this white ideology is unfortunately widely accepted.
Wow.
Yeah, meritocracy is a white ideology. I guess part of white supremacy now. Since everything's white supremacy.
I guess being promoted based on how well you perform at your job is white supremacy, even if you're, like, black.
That's meritocracy. That's definitely not affirmative action.
No, definitely not.
So that must be white supremacy, part of a white ideology to, promote white people.
She has a blog called whiteprivilegedoc.com. where she has everything, like, listed. Oh, she has ways to fight white supremacy, too. You ready to hear some of these?
Yeah, let's hear some
Number
of these.
2 says, stop looking to people of color for information, guidance, and leadership. Aha. So, what does that mean? Don't talk to the people of color.
Yeah, I guess not.
Number 8, attend protests and rallies, but not if you aren't willing to be arrested.
So do, like, criminal stuff.
Does that mean she's saying be criminal? Essentially, it says... Yeah, it says, but when confrontation with law officers occurs, white people should be the ones at the front of the lines holding their ground and forcing officers to arrest them first.
So yeah, she's encouraging criminality.
Yeah.
She calls meritocracy a white ideology. Okay, I know some non-white people that would take offense to that.
I know one definite non-white person that rose because of meritocracy.
Who's that?
Barack Obama.
Yeah.
And even then, I didn't think he was good for the job, but
Nope.
enough Americans did, and they voted for him. That's definitely white supremacy is what got Barack Obama elected.
Yeah, white supremacy, definitely. But, yeah, some crazy stuff from this woman, and she's the caliber of educators for, people in college.
Yeah.
So, if you're sending kids to college, hey, maybe you have a professor just like this Angela Putman, or Pudgeman, as Bobby likes to call her, I guess.
She was fat.
She was fat
Really
in
fat.
Bobby's defense. Let's go into the next thing that we have here. Can you open that up for me?
Yeah. So this one right here says, according to a New York University librarian, Antifa violence is, quote, vitally worth doing. They said that the New York University librarian praised Antifa violence as vitally worth doing in an essay about the recent rise of violence on the far left. April Hathcock is her name. She's arguing that since a, quote, she says that since a, quote, explicitly peaceful movement like Black Lives Matter, faces similar scrutiny to Antifa, leftist protesters might as well employ violence in support of their goals. And she then goes on to say in an essay called, quote, On Antifa and Social Justice Struggle, she argues that she doesn't care about violence perpetuated by Antifa members because the violence is in service of a larger social justice agenda.
Ends justify the means.
Mm-hmm.
Just like when you're implementing communism, it doesn't matter how many people you kill. It's for, social justice and equality, so it's okay.
Yeah, she even calls Black Lives Matter an explicitly peaceful movement. That's definitely not true.
Yeah, tell that to the, families of those dead
11
cops in Dallas.
Yeah.
Something that, is never allowed to be attributed to Black Lives Matter, even though the gunman was an ardent follower of Black Lives Matter.
She says, even peaceful movements get denigrated as divisive and dangerous. Look at Dr. Martin Luther King. He was jailed how many times for his peaceful nonviolent interventions? Well, yeah. You know how many times he would have been jailed if he was violent? He wouldn't have been let out of jail.
Yeah.
And we'd still have even more discrimination and, segregation and all that stuff. So, yeah, she doesn't make any sense. These people, they're openly calling for violence, okay?
Yeah. But this is someone that, goes to a state university and is employed there. So she's getting taxpayer dollars and has viewpoints like this and expresses them openly.
Yeah.
And guess what? I bet there's no one in her faculty there at New York University that is going to criticize her for things that she said like that. No, they agree. They agree. They probably applaud her for having the balls to say such self-evident truths.
And they're going out and they are teaching your children.
Yes.
And if your children are easily impressionable, they're going to fall into this trap, which is exactly what we've seen go around this country, especially over the last couple of years. And I hate to say, it's only going to get worse before it gets better. So, yeah.
Who knows? But yeah, these are the kind of people that
Don't send your kid to college.
Yeah, current Year Colleg Craziness. It's definitely a very crazy lady. Let's get into the last thing that we have here. Oh man, this link is bringing me back to...
Yeah, we've placed the long link, but anyways, there's a story about a free speech ball that is triggering some students, apparently.
Yeah.
And I'll see if I can find it here as well. So, from what I remember of the story, you read the story, so what do you remember it?
Yes.
As I pull it up.
Here, you pull up the specifics for me, and I'll just paraphrase.
Yeah.
So, there was a school, I believe it was out of Illinois, and they had a free speech ball, which is a very it's out of Illinois, right, Bobby?
Southern Illinois University.
Yes, Southern Illinois University, and they had a free speech ball, which, if you don't know anything about like college Republican conservative activism, it's a very common thing. It's the giant beach ball where you get a permanent marker and you just let anyone write whatever they want on it.
Yeah.
Express yourself, free speech. Very, unthreatening. Until today, where they have video of this. The police were called to confront these individuals with their free speech ball, a giant volleyball. And apparently they got reports from multiple people that they were scared of what was going on. And, they had to cooperate with the police. The police were saying... Well, they're arguing, we have the right to be here. This is free speech, which it is. It's protected, what they're doing. And the cops go on to say, no, I don't think that you're allowed to do it here. And they made them agree to move their free speech ball from the side, the walkway, the paved walkway, onto the grass. So they acquiesced in that sense.
Mm-hmm.
But, yeah.
We've done something similar like that on our campus.
Yeah, I've done similar things before. So when I read the story, it's funny, but it was shocking to me because, like, I've been someone that's done this.
Yeah, and when we did on our campus last year, we did a free speech wall, which was literally just a giant piece of wood that we attached a bunch of white poster board to. And we were out there all day, and we told people, you can write whatever you want. It doesn't matter what it is, how vulgar, how racist, whatever it is. The only thing you're not allowed to do is censor other people. You cannot mark over anyone else's what they've wrote. You can point an arrow to it and write about that as if a comment. That's the only rule, no censorship. And it went great. We were out there all week, or not all week, we were out there all day doing that. And people loved it. They thought it was cool.
Yeah, I remember being there.
I don't remember a single person complaining about doing that. They might make a comment about something they saw written on there, but they didn't say, I want this taken down because of this. They didn't mark over it, because we specifically told them, don't censor other people's views. That's the point of free speech. So, I'd like to view our campus as somewhat liberal. But even then, we did something very similar to this, and it went off scot-free.
Yeah,
granted, that was last year.
I've done the free speech wall, and I've also done the free speech ball in the past with my, college political activism career. Nothing, only positives. But now you have a situation where people are so afraid of the idea of free speech, it seems. You have people calling the police on people doing such things, and you have police agreeing with them. Agreeing to do so, to suppress these people and their freedom of speech. I never thought I'd see the day where the free speech ball would be a radical thing.
Yeah.
I thought it was the most, basic bitch conservative thing ever, and it worked well. But I never thought it would be any day in my life something that's radical.
Well, what do you expect when only 48% of Americans can identify freedom of speech as one of the First Amendment protected freedoms?
Well, take it back to the polling we had on Year Colleg Craziness last week on college kids' perceptions of freedom of speech. What was it? Only
19%.
19% said it was okay to use violence to silence some speakers if they're offensive. 19% of college students.
1 in 5 college students.
You had 49% say free speech is, or hate speech is not free speech. So the amount of people that even believe in true free speech, as the Supreme Court has ruled, hate speech is free speech. Everyone should be allowed to speak. Everything, essentially what the Constitution mandates. You only have half of people in college that even believe that. And you have a very, very, very vocal plurality at this point that wants to shut any free speech down. Not just the scary hate speech, it's also the people with their beach balls. So yeah, I don't have anything else to say.
I don't have anything
to
say.
The school gave a statement. Their executive director of University Marketing and Communications, Doug McHalliga, he said that the activists were in violation of the university's policy on governing freedom of expression and demonstrating activities. Quote, the demonstrators didn't follow the proper university procedure for a public forum by going through the Vice Chancellor of Administration's office for approval, he elaborated. We normally get the request for use of the designated public forum. However, in this particular instance, we did not. It's really Orwellian.
Yeah, you got to get permission in order to have a free speech ball. You got to get permission to use your free speech on campus.
Yeah. You need to have the written permission of the Vice Chancellor of Admissions Office before you do free speech.
Yeah.
And, what if that guy, the Vice Administrator or the Vice Chancellor said, no free speech ball, I'm not going to do that.
Yeah.
That's just supposed to be the final say.
Or if they limit what area you're allowed to do it, I'll tell you what area you're allowed to have free speech. It's from sea to fucking shining sea.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
as long as it's a public university, they're allowed to do it anywhere.
And this is a public university, so they should have been able to just go out there and stand there and do their free speech ball if they wanted. I can understand if they're saying, like, you're blocking people's way, you need to move it off to the side. But to pretty much almost shut the whole thing down, that is Orwellian. And that is a violation of their free speech.
Yeah, I don't like the term Orwellian, but it's very apt now. But with that, that's all our stories for Current Year College Craziness. We're going to go to a break. We're going to switch it up. We're going to put on some music. And we're going to come back. We're going to go into international. We're going to fly through that pretty quick, and we'll be done with the show.
All right.
Okay, welcome back from the break. I hope you enjoyed the music we played there. We're going to get into international news. We're going to get through this, starting off with Europe. The big thing happening there is the Catalonia independence vote. That was today. The results have gone 90%. Generally, the polls have been saying have supported independence for Catalonia. Catalonia is the region of Spain. It's the eastern region where Barcelona is.
Like along the Mediterranean Sea.
Yeah, the people there are Catalonia. They have a different language. They're culturally different. They're different people than the rest of Spain. Spain is not a unified nation, heritage-wise. I think that's something people don't realize. They think Spain, Spaniard, it's all one thing. It's not. They're very different. And today we had the vote, and there was because this vote is illegal. That's the thing. And we reported on this last week. They're going after officials. The police in Catalonia were going crazy. The Spanish ones, at least. They were going and taking voting boxes.
Physically walking into the polling place, picking up the boxes that had the votes, and just walking out.
They were arresting people. They were putting down protests. You have a video where Catalonian police officers and firefighters are fighting Spanish police officers. We got reports out of Catalonia. At least 750 people have been injured by the police.
760 now.
Yeah, today. So it's been really crazy out there. I've been so on Catalonian independence. I kind of don't care too much either way. I don't think, because you have to keep in mind, though, Catalonia is extremely left-wing.
Yeah.
It is the most left-wing. If you look back at the Spanish Civil War, Catalonia was the heart of Republican Spain. So, historically, and even today, extremely left-wing. So if they had independence, all they'd really do is just vote to, have more communism and let in more refugees. So I think I'd rather have a unified Spain that doesn't do that. I don't want to destabilize Europe further. But, I don't know. They're probably not going to get independence because of what they did today, but it's going to just further
It's going to cause a lot more violence.
Yeah.
Now that they realize,
division.
Hey, we're all unified in wanting to be independent. They're not letting us be independent.
I mean, it seems crazy to say it, but what's there stopping another civil war in Spain? How is the international community going to respond to that?
Hopefully they won't.
Just
let them fight it out.
Those are the results for the vote today. I expected this. I think most people expected this to go the way that it did. I didn't think it was going to be so violent, but I knew that there was going to be violence today. Any thoughts on the vote, Bobby?
I got nothing else to say.
Let's move on then. So, this is a funny story.
Yeah, this is yours.
So, Russia blocked access to several porn sites this week. Lakov Smirnov is the Russian primary media regulator, and they've cut off access to many different porn sites, including Pornhub and YouPorn. And they also... There, I'm sorry. Jumping around a bit. Article's not loading too well. But, yeah, they pretty much just blocked porn in general in the country.
Now, do you have the quote that Vladimir Putin said in response to this?
I'm looking for the exact quote I'm looking for. Oh, yeah. So, they have given, responses like this in the past. And, in the past, they had a response that said, when they blocked the porn site, when you pull it up, it said, as an alternative, you could try and meet someone in real life. So, that's what they used to say in the past. Now when you pull this stuff up, it just says, this site has been blocked by decision of public authorities. So, in terms of, freedom, this is this isn't freedom. This is the government's just cracking down on it because it wants to. I'm not that opposed to this, though. I mean, pornography is not generally good. I don't know. Funny story, though. Russia banned pornography. Good on them. You do you. We'll do us. We'll celebrate Hugh Hefner dying. You fix your problems with degeneracy. It's great.
We got too many problems as our own, but
yeah, especially with all those STDs that we reported on.
I don't think if the U.S. government did this, it would go very well.
It wouldn't go well, but I wouldn't be upset.
It'd be like Rick Santorum all over again.
Yeah, it would be interesting, but yeah, those crazy Russians, what are they going to come up with next? Banning pornography.
First they elect Donald Trump, and then they ban pornography. Yep, crazy Russians.
Authoritarianism personified.
So,
let's move on to the next thing. This is an interesting thing.
Yeah. So this is just a quick statistic that we want to bring up. Now, we mentioned stuff similar like this to the past, but this is an updated number. Of the 1.2 million migrants that have arrived in Germany over the last 2 years...
Which the number's higher than that.
Yeah. Only 34,000, or 2.8%, have actually found a job. Yeah.
The rest are supported by the state, which is why they went to Germany in the first place. And they said 1.2 there. That number is definitely low. It's more along the lines of 3 to 4 million. They've had years where they've taken in 1 million. So, yeah, and the German taxpayer pays for all of it. They're pulling that society down, and the number increases every single year. And, I've had arguments with some of the quote-unquote smartest young libertarians in the country. I've traveled out to their functions and whatnot when I was in that sphere. They would always tell me, no, these migrants coming to Europe, they're only good. They bring the GDP up. They are an economic boom for them. No, they're not. They are an anchor along the neck of the German taxpayer, pulling them down into the cesspool of a failed multicultural state, a la Sweden will be in 10 years.
So yeah, Sweden's going to be a third world country in 10 years.
Yeah. Which, I mean, we've talked about Sweden so many times in this show.
It's so depressing talking about everything that ever happens in Europe nowadays.
Yeah. And I don't really want Germany to do the same. And, we had the German election last week. AfD got some promising numbers, 14% of parliament.
It shows people are fighting back against this.
Is it enough in time, though? That's the big thing. And I do not think so
either. Too little, too late.
Too little, too late. But, I don't know. Sweden, like we said, reports have said by the year 2025, they'll be considered a third world nation. One of the, former most utopian, perfect, high-trust societies to ever exist. Socialistic Sweden. Germany, as the strongest economy in Europe, it's doing well enough for its own right now, but it's not going to last with the trends with immigration continuing unless they do something. But, like we said, they probably won't. Let's move on to the last thing for Europe.
So the last thing that we have for Europe is this happened last night. There was another terrorist attack in France. This is in Marseille at a train station where a assailant who was shouting Allahu Akbar got a knife out and started stabbing two women, or actually started stabbing several women. Two of them were killed. And then the French police shot and killed that guy as well. So we have yet another terrorist attack in France. So not too much more information has come out about this, but they said one of the victims had her throat slit and the other was stabbed in the stomach. One was 17 and the other one was 20 years old. So these were like young girls. The attacker was described as a man in his late 20s who was not carrying any ID. They're currently running his fingerprints through the databases. They do indicate that the attacker was known to the police as a common criminal. In doing so, they'll figure out if the guy was known to the police as a common criminal or if local media had cited any other sources along that. So it's being treated as a terrorist attack by the authorities there. Yeah, part and parcel of living in a big city, right, Enzo?
Yeah, and apparently that's supposed to be every city, every big city in Europe. And you're supposed to love it. With the diversity, it's so great.
That's what every 20 and 17-year-old girl wants to think when they go out on the train on a Saturday is, I wonder if I'm going to get stabbed in the stomach or have my throat slit today by some guy shouting Allahu Akbar.
And, we always talk about Sweden, but they have polling similar to what you just said. And we talked about on the show, I believe, 3 weeks ago. It was in regards to women and how safe they feel to be walking around at night now due to the migrant crisis. 85% of Swedish women do not feel safe to walk out at night because of the rise in crime, especially sexual crimes like rape that we've seen, and also terroristic crimes. So, not good, especially for women out in Europe right now.
Nope, not at all.
Let's go into Asia now.
So the first story that we have here for Asia is only one thing from North Korea this week, I think.
One from North, one from South.
Yeah, so not really much in the North Korean news for this week, but the North Korea has accused the U.S. of declaring war on them. Their foreign minister accused Trump of declaring war. He says that he is now giving his rogue regime the right to shoot down any U.S. strategic bombers they see. And they said that the Trump regime won't be around much longer. Well, I'll tell you one thing. You start shooting down our planes that are flying around there, North Korea is going to be the one that's not going to be there much longer either. Their foreign minister is Ri Yong-ho is his name. So, that's pretty much what we got to do there. He says, quote, "Since the United States declared war on our country, we will have every right to make countermeasures, including the right to shoot down United States strategic bombers, even when they are not inside the airspace border of our country." He says, "The whole world should clearly remember it was the U.S. who first declared war on our country." Well, I didn't see that we declared war. Did you, Enzo?
Yeah, I don't remember.
I never remember any congressional resolution. I don't remember Trump signing any documents, so... Sounds like you're full of crap, Mr. North Korean minister, but you know what? They're now threatening to shoot down our bombers even if we just fly them near North Korea, not even in their airspace.
Yeah.
That's an act of war, and that's about to get all of North Korea turned into the parking lot for Seoul, South Korea Disneyland.
Yeah. So, some tough talking, but we've been seeing tough talking since we started doing this program over 6 months ago. So... At least nothing really happened this week as far as North Korea is concerned.
Yeah.
I wanted to touch on some things out of South Korea, though, and that is South Korean President Moon is now calling for the United States to transfer wartime operational control, OPCON, from the Pentagon over to the South Koreans. Now, this is something that they actually looked to do in 2014, but... Seoul asked Washington to delay it. Now, between 1950 and 1994, the entire South Korean army was commanded by an American general. Now, we have ceded peacetime duties back over to the South Koreans, but we still are control, as Americans, of the wartime capabilities of the South Koreans. But they want this back now. They say that being able to command their own troops in South Korea gives North Korea more to fear because it's personal to them. So, yeah, we're going to hopefully very soon see a dramatic change in, the situation out there.
I'd be okay with that.
Yeah, I'd be good for them to take the responsibility, and they want to take the responsibility themselves. So hopefully we can see some progress on that. And as I said, it's been something that's been delayed in the past. So hopefully we see that happen soon.
Yep. So
let's move on to North and South America, with that said.
So this first story that we have is out of Canada. And they are saying that it is no longer a safe haven for immigrants that are losing their U.S. protection. And they said that Canada has an urgent message for immigrants that are entering the U.S. because of that, saying, don't count on us for refuge. Now, this is mainly because there's been, as reported last week, an influx of illegal immigrants entering Canada. There was an 80% rise last month in illegal immigrants entering Canada. And it's getting to the point where they're not able to deal with this anymore. And they're not even saying that they're going to be a safe space or like a sanctuary for people that are going up there. And if they get caught, they're going to get deported. Now, that goes in contrast to what Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has said about saying, yeah, send all your refugees and your immigrants
take
here.
you with open arms.
We'll take you enough for arms.
You're more Canadian than me because you, as a refugee, chose to come here and I didn't get to do that. He's literally said that.
Yeah, he did. And they're warning mostly Haitians who came into the U.S. during after the Haitian earthquake. They got like a 6 or 7 year ability to stay here. Those are about to expire. Okay, so that's essentially the people that are going up to Canada.
A big
they don't want to leave
driving
the US.
force, amongst others that are just afraid of Donald Trump. So, you have a Prime Minister and Justin Trudeau who wants to virtue signal on immigration. Turns out there's repercussions for your signaling. Now you have a problem with illegal immigration that you don't want to deal with, but your people in your country do want to deal with.
Right. Something else Canadians don't want to deal with, but they do have to deal with, is last night there was another terrorist attack, this one also in Canada, as a driver with an ISIS flag inside his car started deliberately ramming pedestrians. They said that a car was driving at high speed towards a police checkpoint in Edmonton. He crashed through the barricade and hit a police officer, causing that police officer to fly 15 feet in the air. He then jumped out and viciously started attacking the injured officer, stabbing him several times before getting back in his car and running away. And just hours later, they were chasing him down the highway, or down city streets, and he started just swerving into every single pedestrian that he saw. I think he injured 6 or 7 people, I believe, if those numbers are correct. And this happened right in front of their Commonwealth Stadium, which is where they have 30,000 people at games and stuff. So this is an area that a lot of people know exactly where it's at. Yeah, so as it stands, Canada just had a terror attack.
Well, it's good that they're taking more refugees.
And
that will only lower the number.
And he had an ISIS flag in his car when they caught him.
Yeah.
So, you know what type of guy that was.
Yeah. Good stuff there in Canadistan.
Very, very good stuff, Enzo.
Let's go on to the Middle East. I have the first thing here, and that is the Kurdish people of northern Iraq had a referendum earlier this week on Kurdish independence from Iraq. And 92% of the roughly 3 million people who voted in the referendum voted yes to independence. So another independence referendum too this week.
Yeah.
And this one also is kind of up in arms, though, because also, similar to Spain, the government in Baghdad has called this election illegal, so non-binding. You look at the situation in general of the Kurdish people, they're a separate people from the Arabs that they live around. They are entirely different. They have a different language. They are discriminated against. It's pretty bad. And the Kurdish people are a diaspora people. They're a nation without a nation state. They also have, as we've said before in the 2017 Global Conflicts Report, have a large population of people in Turkey that are attacked viciously by the Turks themselves, also by the Turkish army. And also they have a very large population in Iran who also doesn't want any sort of Kurdish nationalism getting around. So all the nations around do want to quash this stuff that's happening, but it is happening right now in northern Iraq, and they're a semi-autonomous region. But they say that they're going to take the results from that referendum. They're going to go to talks in Baghdad, and they're going to try and advocate for themselves. The only people that have expressed support, because us in the United States, we haven't even expressed support for them.
Yeah.
The only country that has expressed support for them is Israel. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has said that they support their vote, and they say it is a vote for self-determination, which, it is. But, so hopefully that doesn't turn out into some sort of civil war. There's already a civil war going on in Iraq, but we'll have to see what comes of that vote.
I don't know. I'm personally in favor of the Kurds having their own country.
It would be good if they did.
I think it would definitely do good to lessen tensions, especially in northern Iraq.
Yeah.
If it was their own territory and they said, look, we control this area, you don't. And plus, I think they have a right to a homeland, too. So
yeah. Let's get to the last story of the episode this week. And this is kind of a continuation of what finished the show last week. And this is news out of Saudi Arabia.
Right. So last week, out of Saudi Arabia, we got the news that women were going to be allowed to go to concerts and sports events, which they previously were unable to do. This next story is probably the biggest story in terms of Saudi Arabia and human rights in decades. Saudi Arabia is finally going to allow women to drive. Yeah.
Funny that we're saying that's a new right, but yeah, that's not a thing there.
Yeah, and so that's the meme that people have been talking about for years about why can't women in Saudi Arabia drive if they're such feminists and whatnot. That's real discrimination, but now they're going to be allowed to drive. Now keep in mind, it doesn't actually go into effect until June of 2018.
Yeah.
So,
they're not ready to do this yet, but, eventually women will get to drive in Saudi Arabia, which, is a big improvement over, what they were doing before. It's hard to have reform in Wahhabist Islamic monarchical states that, cut people's hands off for apostasy and stuff. But, baby steps. Baby steps.
So, this one girl who was asked a question, she said, I was very, very excited. I was jumping up and down and I was laughing. I'm going to buy a dream car, a convertible Mustang, and it's going to be black and yellow. Yeah, I wonder whose oil money you're using to pay for that.
Well,
so, yeah.
Well, it's cute. It's cute, though. She wants to drive a car.
So, that's really all I have to say about that.
Yeah, I guess it's good that's happening.
Yeah, good for them.
Good for them. But, with that said, that's the show for the week. You have anything to say before we go, Bobby?
All I gotta say is, no, not really, nothing, no.
Yeah, we don't know what we're going to do for the midweek this week. It could be, we have a lot of different ideas. I don't know, we also are trying to contact people. But we'll see, we'll have something. You'll see it, Wednesday like usual.
Yep.
But with that said, thank you for listening to another episode of Trump Republic Radio, and have a good one.
Bye, everybody.
Goodbye.